Out of the gates and ready to go. OutKick 360 underway, the Thursday edition. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. Plenty to get to. Trey Wallace will join us from OutKick.com. He does each and every Thursday. Coming up in 20 minutes, we'll hit the SEC headlines and more. Armando Salguero helps us preview the AFC and NFC Championship matchups. Our NFL writer at OutKick on with us in hour number 2. One big thing on the championship games. That's coming up in hour 3. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Frank Reich is the head coach. Again.
Not the retread coach I was expecting to be the first off the list retread coaches.
I agree.
So that part of it surprised me. I was also surprised to learn that Frank Reich attended seminary school in Charlotte.
He was a pastor in Charlotte prior to 2007 before he took his first coaching gig.
Didn't realize that the tie was there to the city of Charlotte.
And as Armando Salguero wrote, he's going to need a lot of prayer with the quarterback situation he's inheriting. He went through 7 quarterbacks in Indianapolis from his 5 seasons as the Colts head coach. Had a winning record, of course, was fired mid-season, and has had time to get set up for his next gig. Turns out it's going to be with the Carolina Panthers, so we do have one job filled. And the question now is Steve Wilkes, who did a very nice job as the interim head coach, where does he go from here? He's already a part of the Brian Flores lawsuit stemming from the Arizona Cardinals, and we talked about this from really from the jump whenever he was named the interim head coach. Carolina and David Tepper, I know that the locker room really liked Steve Wilkes, the players. You can tell because of how they played for the interim head coach whenever we saw what happened with the coaching staff there and all the changes, the trade with McCaffrey. They played hard. They were competitive, even though the roster wasn't that great. And now Frank Reich inherits this team, and Steve Wilkes, or we sit and wait to see what happens next and the response to the Panthers not going with a minority head coach who was the interim, who did a nice job, and instead going with Frank Reich as one of the 2 finalists after they interviewed Sean Payton, Chad, and that is who you're referring to as the retread coach that is still out there.
Yeah, I mean, how on earth are Panthers fans supposed to be excited about this? This guy was bad. In the end, he just got fired. I
mean,
average,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could point to, the quarterback issue, and he didn't elevate any of that.
You're right.
This retread phenomenon in the NFL and the lack of outside-the-box thinking, and I get it. There have been hires that are outside the box that have failed miserably. Hello, Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. I understand that. But this always leaning to the comfort level of, this guy's been a head coach in the league before, so he knows how to work it. I don't get it. I feel like there are 100 better candidates than Frank Reich for the Panthers. Good for Frank Reich. He seems like a great man. Seems like, a good guy to have in your organization in some way. But if I'm a Panthers fan today, you're going to have to really gin up some interest to me to make me excited about why the guy who just got fired in Indianapolis in midseason and now he's immediately hired by my franchise is somehow going to be the guy to lead this franchise to the next level.
He was 40-33-1 in his 5 seasons as the head coach with the Indianapolis Colts. And, again, 7 different quarterbacks. They have the 9th overall selection in the upcoming NFL draft.
Which could become the number 1 overall selection.
Yeah, it could. It could.
I've floated that out there. I for some reason, I see the Panthers, the team that may surprise and trade all the way up to number 1 to draft Bryce Young.
Yeah, absolutely. And, also keep in mind, they don't have currently a quarterback on the roster that was going to be under contract for next season. So they can have a lot of maneuvering at that position this offseason. Steve Wilkes, I wonder where he goes now because of the defensive background. My guess would be the Atlanta Falcons because of the fact that they haven't made many hires with some of the coaches that have departed either due to retirement or due to the likelihood that they're going to be given the chance to upgrade from, Charles London, their quarterback's coach, has a chance to be the offensive coordinator in Nashville. He's one of the guys that's talked with the Titans. So the Falcons, I think, have been waiting on all of these defensive coaches who are interviewing try to decide if they're going to fill the role that way. Again, the lawsuit is going to be a big storyline now because a minority coach didn't get the job in Carolina despite doing a pretty good job as the interim head coach in a very bad situation where they traded away the top talent and still won some games.
I just, again, not excited if I'm a Panthers fan right now. And,
Are you more
and the
excited
fact that
with
he's the first one.
Because those were the two finalists. Again.
Why are they the two finalists?
Well,
this is my thing with NFL owners. We're going to get to Jeff Saturday here soon. It's ridiculous that he's getting a second interview. Like, get out of your comfort level and go find some actual coaching candidates. Steve Wilkes, to me, is about equal to Frank Reich in terms of head coaching with what he did with the Panthers late in the year. I would have been not excited equally with Steve Wilkes or Frank Reich.
Well,
and it's not about just winning the press conference. I'm not saying just go try to make a splash with someone. I'm saying Frank Reich is the first guy off the board. Didn't see that one coming. I felt like Frank Reich may be the last coach hired because it didn't work out with the two other guys they were talking to. And they just fell back into it. Well, let's just bring a guy in who's done it before.
Well,
and who's a good guy.
The Sean Payton aspect of it, the Panthers did talk with him last Friday. They met with him in New York. And, there's now a report out that Sean Payton, the interview went fine in Denver, except for him not seeing certain things eye to eye with one member of the Broncos ownership group. And he's also asking for $20 to $25 million per year to be a head coach again. And you're going to have to trade for him. And the price tag is probably higher for the Panthers than it would be for any other team because they're in the same division as the Saints. So if not Sean Payton, I mean, the list of coaches, DeMeco Ryans sounds like he's going to end up in Houston or Denver. Beyond that, there's not like this long list of just up-and-coming stars that are no-brainers.
So the Panthers, what's interesting about the Panthers with Sean Payton, if you remember the podcast interview with his daughter, he brought up the Panthers. She was bringing up the odds of teams, and I remember he made a point to say, what about the Panthers? They don't have a coach right now. And I just found that interesting. Now, he could have been trolling knowing that he wasn't going to go there, so he's just putting that team out there to talk about it, but...
Well, he's wanting certain control.
Yeah, look,
right?
I think you could do worse than Frank Reich. I don't want to make it like Frank Reich is Nathaniel Hackett as a head coach.
Right.
But I'm just a little bit surprised. I was taken aback when I saw that Frank Reich is the first draft pick in terms of here is the head coach candidate that's off the board now for a team and the first hire of the offseason. Surprised me.
Well, are we going to be really surprised if Jeff Saturday's named the head coach of the Colts?
No. At this point, I'll be surprised if he's not.
Yeah, because he's back in line for a second interview. There's a report that Irsay really wants to hire him. There is a petition out from Colts fans trying to get Irsay's attention to not hire Jeff Saturday as the full-time head coach in Indianapolis. And he's one of 7 coaches that are getting second interviews with Irsay. I don't know what they're doing in Indy, but this is Irsay. This is a perfect example of an owner meddling way too much. If you're keeping your GM around, let that guy go in and make this the football decision. Irsay, at the press conference with Saturday, started listing off all the hires that he had made from, general manager in the Hall of Fame. We have a head coach in the Hall of Fame, a quarterback in the Hall of Fame, and he's pointing to himself as making that hire. And all signs point to Jeff Saturday getting the gig.
It's almost like Shane Beamer defending his coordinator hire when he was listing everyone that he talked to about it. Have you heard of Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells? Have you talked to these people? Jim Irsay, someone needs to do a welfare check on this guy. He's lost it. I don't understand. Long ago that it happened. You felt like he was better. But this drive your head through a brick wall. I am right on this. Everyone else is wrong. Jeff Saturday is the guy. Persistence with him is going to run this organization into the ground. I defended the outside-the-box thinking of Jeff Saturday when the hire was made, saying that you don't have to serve 25 years as an assistant coach in the NFL to be qualified to be an NFL head coach. Now, what I've seen from Jeff Saturday is someone who is not qualified to be an NFL head coach. based on his interim experience. How Jim Irsay has not seen that as the owner of the team is beyond me. And he's going to have to get over this love of Jeff Saturday if the Colts are going to move forward. And Hutton, you asked the question, how would you be surprised? I'd be surprised if it didn't happen at this point. This thing is trending. I know there's 7 other guys that are getting a second interview. The fact that Saturday is on that list, mark my word, this thing is trending towards Jim Irsay just loves Jeff Saturday, and he is going to be named the full-time head coach. And no player in that organization is going to respect it. The GM might leave when that happens. This is going to be disastrous for the Colts organization.
Well, and also Jordan Schultz reported that Irsay hasn't even really been sitting in the interviews to this point. So it's, his mind's made up. You've got Chris Ballard, who's conducting a lot of this.
So he jumps in now for the second
round. So they're bringing back 7, which again, 7 sounds like a first round of interviews. And you narrow it down to 2 or 3, which is what the Panthers did.
Maybe, just maybe. I'm trying to give Colts fans a little bit of hope here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, just maybe, Jim Irsay said, hey, we put Jeff in a tough spot. You go ahead and pick the 5 or 6 guys you want to bring back for a second interview to the GM. I'll come in the second round of the interviews, but let's give Jeff a spot in that second round regardless, because the difficult spot I put him in, and then we can conduct the full interview with him also. Maybe. I don't think that's the case. I think that Irsay really wants to hire Saturday, and it's going to happen. But maybe this is just another courtesy thing of, I brought him into this mess. It was a tough spot. He got ridiculed. I got ridiculed. Let's at least give him the second interview with me also. Maybe, but I don't think so.
There was another reporter on social media that put out that Irsay in the interview, not Irsay, Saturday in his interview said that he wanted control of his staff. And I'm thinking, of course. Like that's one of the things. Saturday's going to be in control of his staff. Like he'll be able to fire the current coaches that he doesn't want to keep around. But that's typical for any head coach. He should have full control over his staff.
Has there been a head coach that was hired that, I mean, I'm sure there's been a stipulation of like, this guy's been here a long time. We'd like to keep the defensive coordinator or someone in the organization that's under contract. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of a situation where an NFL head coach interviewed for a job and the owner said, oh, by the way, we're going to hire your staff for you. And it's going to be an arranged marriage with your staff. So, of course, to your point,
it's happened
Jeff
with general
Saturday
manager
would want control
interviews,
of it.
of course.
Yeah.
Like Mike Mularkey here, whenever they hired John Robinson.
I'm saying I'm sure it's happened with like one coach on one side of the ball, one coordinator.
Yeah.
Defense wasn't the problem. This guy's been here. We like him.
Well,
are you okay working with him? Offensive coordinator, same thing.
Mike McDaniel kept the defensive staff in Miami from the previous season.
And that may have been part of the interview process.
Could have been.
Are you okay working with this defensive staff?
And they're now cleaning house on that side, too, a year later. It is up on social at OutKick 360. Speaking of staffs, Bruce Arians reportedly not happy with the fact that 6 assistant coaches in Tampa Bay were fired and 3 other assistants, take it however you want, retired. So a total of 9 from the staff. This is a year after Arians had the quote about how he's not going to have the opportunity to keep that staff together and ensure that they have full success after he retires, which is why he put Todd Bowles, handpicked him, put him in that position, why they kept everything together, and Arians was still around the team. Reportedly, he's not pleased with the way things went down throughout the season, but also immediately following the offseason where coaches were not retained. Arians, by the way, his contract is expired. He's free to go to any other organization. Technically, he's in retired status, I guess you could say. But, Chad, this is to me, this points to Brady. This points to the front office and ownership that are solid with Brady by all reports. And going back to last year, I'm saying we haven't heard any disagreement from that end of things. The speculation was Brady and Arians. And now that Leftwich and several other staff members are off the coaching roster, they definitely want to be in the mix to retain Brady for another season. And to me, this is a way to go about doing that.
Maybe, it seems like a way to appease Brady, something that he would want, that they're looking out for what would he want with this staff. The whole Bruce Arians thing is just so strange to me. The separation from head coach, He sort of, I guess, officially retired and then went to the front office, but he was
like
probably
an
pushed
advisor
out.
or something. Yeah.
But he's a senior advisor that's on the sideline during the games. It's very visible, and now he's words leaking out that he's angry about the firings, but he's not under contract. The whole relationship with Arians and the Bucs post him winning a Super Bowl for them has been very odd.
And he put Bowles in position to win, knowing that a year prior to him stepping away, they won the Super Bowl. And they had the big comeback against the Rams. We know how that ended. The Rams kick a field goal in Tampa and win the game and go on to the NFC Championship game and send Arians packing, but by his own choosing. He worked out the remainder of his contract, which was this season, but just wasn't the head coach. And now, just going back to his quote, Chad, I control the narrative right now. I don't control it next February, because if Brady gets hurt, if we go 10-7 and it's an open interview for the job, I've got 31 coaches and their families that depend on me. My wife is big on not letting all those families down. And a year later, that's exactly what happened, except they didn't go 10-7. They went 8-9. And they cleaned house on offense, but also a couple of defensive assistants as well. That's what happens when you go 8-9 in a bad division. And you have Brady as your quarterback.
It's also what happens when you allow a guy who's a Super Bowl champion to get pushed out and somehow hang around your organization to just throw flames at everything that you do from that point on. Again, odd arrangement, odd separation between the two with Arians and the Bucs, and this is just another layer to that strangeness to me.
We'll dive back into the coaching rumors and hires with Frank Reich and Carolina. Also with what Jim Irsay is doing with Jeff Saturday. And what about Sean Payton? That's coming up later in the show, hour number 2 with Armando Salguero. When we come back, LSU overpaid Brian Kelly by $1 million. We'll lead off with that story with Trey Wallace next on OutKick 360.
NIL, when it comes to Florida, has been a story over the last couple of weeks because of Jaden Rashada. And you put out a great piece with a timeline on kind of how things went down, who kind of was the one involved in this, I don't know, situation with Jaden Rashada. And so let's kind of dive into that. Coming off your reporting, and I don't want you to give everything away because I want people to go and read it. But what we're kind of looking into this thing for the last couple of months, man, what were some of your big takeaways? Maybe shocked you, or you just, when you dug deep into it, you're like, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
Well, I think that's probably the first thing to note is this has been ugly publicly for 2 weeks, but as you said there, it's been going on for 2 months, and I think the big thing is, and I didn't really touch on it in the story, was it was so interesting to follow Florida and Miami this year. Obviously, you've got John Ruiz, a billionaire, pretty deep pockets, and he's just throwing money and caution to the wind. Wanted to see his Hurricanes get back to the top, and there were so many instances, more than I can remember since I've been covering the team since 2013, where Florida and Miami were 1-2 or in the top 3 with commits in the same class. And I think Florida just came out second place or third place to Miami so many times. And I think what precipitated this whole incident was Florida trying to get a win back. And this was right after Cormani McClain shocked the world. And it was right after Florida had gotten back into conversations with Jaden, because prior to him coming to Miami, they were sent to the scholarship offer. I think saw the writing on the wall. Jaden had told them, hey, I'm going to go to Miami. And I think what you got was Florida and boosters or collective people around Florida like, hey, we need to get a win. And I think you saw – really a year-long battle between Florida and Miami, collectives and boosters, that Miami was winning. I think you saw Florida try to get back into it. And whether the money was never there and there was a miscommunication, or if the money was promised and then somebody came off, and was like, hey, that's a lot of money. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I don't know. We probably need to get to litigation and some discovery to find that out. But for whatever reason, the money was not going to be there, and the Gator Collective kind of realized that, and with their name on the line and their name on the contract, terminated the contract.
Why do you think we've gotten into besides the rivalry between Miami and Florida, Cristobal coming down to Miami, Billy Napier's at Florida now. He got Norvell, a lot of people thought was hanging on by a thread at Florida State. Now he kind of turns it around in 2022. Okay, so he's set for the next year or so, maybe 2 years. We'll see. Well, why do you think it turned into a pissing match between Miami and Florida? It's like when NIL struck, it felt like those two teams, and not Florida State. I'm not trying to diminish Florida State, but it felt like Miami and Florida were just going back and forth and seeing who could either outbid the other, or B, take it one step further when it comes to recruiting. Is it because of Ruiz, and is it because of some of the boosters at Florida? Is it that simple?
I mean, nothing is black and white in our world, and you're probably looking at way more colors than even black, white, and gray when it comes to NIL and in this scenario. I mean, this is a landscape that Nevin Shapiro would have thrived in. Wouldn't have had to be so sneaky.
Chad, there may have been like 1 or 2 pay periods over the course of our career where we've been like overpaid for like an endorsement once or twice, right? Like that like carries over to the next month or something. But nothing like we're seeing at LSU.
No,
Brian Kelly.
And I feel like if there was any egregious error, it would be immediately spotted and then taken back.
Or it's taken out of the next month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Trey Wallace joins us. OutKick 360 rolls on. You can read more about this at OutKick.com. Trey, how does LSU pay Brian Kelly $1 million more than what they should have?
You have a horrible accountant who doesn't pay attention, or if he's not paying attention, he knew what was going on and just let it fly by. That's the crazy thing. Y'all were talking about it. Like if Clay and OutKick or whatever decided to give me double pay during the month of December, I would probably point that out at the end of the month, and then let them have a payment schedule to get it back. I mean, it's bonkers, and and the crazy part about that is, Jonathan, they didn't figure it out till November, so this had been going on for 7 months,
and this was through the audit of the university, right? And the biggest question is, whoever inputted this into the payroll or whatever, if it was $9 million, someone put a 10 instead of a 9. It's not just an extra a misplaced comma, right? Like it's an extra digit that's not a 0, and that's what's so weird about it.
Yeah, he was getting supplemental pay. I mean, if it wasn't for an audit done of, and he was like Brian Kelly was one of like 3 coaches that were audited. So think about if they didn't audit Brian Kelly. Like, this could still be going on. So it's a funny story. It's a what in the world are you doing, LSU accountants type of story. And now they've set up a payment plan for him. It's like he took out a loan at Best Buy to pay back the television. So good luck, Brian Kelly.
Trey, let's get into this story that you had with Stetson Bennett and the Senior Bowl. It's very strange to me that if Stetson Bennett, in fact, had an opportunity to go, and he's healthy especially, you got Hendon Hooker going who's not healthy, it would only benefit him to go and go through the interview process there. Tell us more about this story and what you think about this decision from Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I think it's a bad decision not to go to the Senior Bowl. And I have a piece coming out tomorrow, and it's kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the Senior Bowl and what you expect, as a player and as a GM, and you guys know about it. But the Senior Bowl is an opportunity where you get in front of coaches, you get in front of Bill Belichick or Harbaugh or you name it, Frank Reich, and you discuss. It's like the first test when it comes to being an NFL player, and the fact that he has decided not to play in the game. And that's one thing. The other thing is not showing up for, and doing interviews with scouts that are there. The first day that Senior Bowl players arrive, on the second day, on Monday, these players get up in front of probably 400 NFL personnel members, and they're in their underwear and they're getting weighed and their measures, their hands and whatnot. It is very interesting to me that he show up. And I was told, he's been in Mobile for the last 4 or 5 days training down in Mobile where the game is going on. So that gave them the opportunity to go talk with Stetson Bennett and be like, hey, look, like we didn't technically invite you during the season, towards the end of the season, but we're saying, hey, come to the Senior Bowl. Like, we want you here. And his representatives in Stetson thought that it wasn't a good idea for him. I have a couple of theories of why he didn't show up. One of them being that they're going to figure out how much this kid weighs and actually how small he is. But that shouldn't be like something to deter you from going. Like, everybody knows. Like, everybody knows how much you weigh. Everybody, but there is a couple of things in there that maybe Jonathan Chad that would scare him off. Maybe.
I mean, there are 17 scouts across the league at every Georgia game. Like, they already know what the guy looks like in pads. So I don't think that's the issue. I don't. So 2 big questions. Like,
yeah.
And I reached out to Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl last night, and I haven't heard back, and I'm sending another text because why was he not invited to begin with?
Well, I think that, and this is my personal opinion, so go with it as you will. I think they were waiting on Will Levis. And when Will Levis decided not to play in the game, and this was kind of recently, I think that's when they started having discussions with Stetson Bennett about coming. Now, I think that Stetson, here's the thing about the Senior Bowl. They just added Malik Cunningham from Louisville as a quarterback. They added a Charlotte wide receiver yesterday. Mm-hmm. The Senior Bowl adds players, as the season goes on. And by the way, Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl, who does a fantastic job.
Oh, it's excellent.
They get these recommendations from NFL personnel. So it's not like Jim Nagy is sitting there in the office and thinking, okay, well, we don't know if Stetson should come, but Will Levis maybe should come, or Malik Cunningham. They're getting input from who's going to be down there. I am kind of curious as to why maybe an invitation didn't come in the mail 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. But there's always a marker for that. And if and maybe you'll agree with this, Jonathan and Chad, if you're projected to be a 6th or 7th round draft pick, the Senior Bowl is not usually for those type of players normally.
Right.
These are guys that from maybe 1st round to 5th round, something like that. Like, if you think you're going to go later, usually you don't come to the Senior Bowl. But you have to make an exception, in my opinion, for a 2-time national championship quarterback and a guy who's lost 1 game in the last 2 years. So it is kind of interesting, hoping to get some answers when I get down to Mobile to cover that for next week. But it came down to Stetson, by the way, at the end. He said, I didn't want to do it. His reps did. Whoever did, they said they didn't want to do it. And, the Senior Bowl tried.
Trey, it's a good time to be involved in Tennessee athletics. It's a profitable time as well for both Danny White and Josh Heupel. No surprise, both guys get big raises and big contract extensions. What did you make of the news this week?
Yeah, Chad, I thought that was a statement from Dondi, and I thought that was a statement from Danny White. Hey, you know what? We have a good thing going here. We're looking towards the future. We want to lock this thing up, make a buyout as big as you want to. It really doesn't matter. But we're going to pay Josh Heupel what we think the market should be for a coach that goes 11-2 and beats Clemson in the Orange Bowl and the wins that they had this year and the progression that they've made. Because you look around the conference, Chad, and you look at some of the other salaries, Eli sitting around 6, Shane Beamer, in that 6 market, Billy Napier, as well. Josh Heupel is now up there, right behind Jimbo, right behind Nick Saban, right behind Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly. This is a statement that Tennessee is saying, you know what? We think that we're back. We think that we have things going in the right direction. We proved it on the field next year. We want to make Josh Heupel as profitable as he can be. And when you pay a coach like that as well, you're not just rewarding the coach. You're also publicly making a statement to the college football world that, hey, we got this thing going in the right direction. He deserves this amount of money. Now it's up to Josh Heupel to not pull a Mel Tucker, where Mel Tucker gets this boatload of money, and then they turn around, Michigan State's not good. They're playing bad last year. Josh Heupel's got to keep this thing going in the right direction, but I think you will. And you hit on that second part with Danny White. That's a very smart move by Tennessee. It's not like Danny White was going anywhere, okay? But I think Tennessee, look at all the sports, okay? Look at men's basketball and where they're at right now. That's a top 5 team in the country. Women's basketball tonight, I think they won, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 9 games in a row. They're going to play UConn tonight on national television at 8 o'clock Eastern time. You've got a baseball team in Tony Vitello, who is the villains of the college baseball world, but he's earned his paycheck in the crowds that he is bringing out and what he has done with that program. And you can go on. You go track and field, you can go however. The swim team, they're having success. Danny White has done a really good job of uniting the Tennessee fan base. Because remember when he first came in there, he said, let's get rid of all these distractions on Twitter. Let's not be negative. All Twitter needs to chill out. What have we seen over the last 2 years for Tennessee? We've seen them make a steady upward climb of success. And I think that has to do with Danny White rearranging that building over there on campus. And I think it's the hires that he has made. And if it isn't the hires that he's made, it's how he's handled those hires in the process.
Yeah, text a buddy, I think is what he said. Instead of going to social media, just text a buddy when your team
Text
loses and you're upset. It's a lot easier, it's still the same type of therapy. I love the line from Danny White in the press release also where he said something like, after a brief period of dormancy, Tennessee never relinquished their place as a college football powerhouse nationally, and now we're back. I will also say this, Trey.
We're back.
There's pressure on Josh Heupel from this perspective. You make $9 million a year. This is now the expectation. Not to go 11-2 every year, but now suddenly 8-4 next year is a disappointment to Tennessee fans. That wasn't the case 2 or 3 years ago. You're praying for 8-4 at Tennessee. Now 8-4, and you are going to have some Tennessee fans not texting a buddy and taking to social media and saying, why are we paying this guy $9 million a year to be middle of the pack in the SEC?
Chad, I would have hated to seen what some Tennessee fans would have done to go 8-4 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, or have success. You look at last year and what they did. You come back this year, you win the games that you pull off. That Alabama game was probably the best college football game of the year, behind, not behind, but right there with LSU and Bama and Death Valley. So, you beat Florida. You're showing off against some of these teams. You have this high-powered offense. You get the number 1 ranking in the country. He's come in and he has done a very good job, first off, of setting expectations. Second of all, of getting the right players that he needs for his program. And I think that when you look towards the future, I agree with you. Next year, 8-4 ain't going to cut it. Not for a $9 million man. And here's the thing. That's good to have expectations like that now, if you're paying that head coach that amount of money. Like you look at Tennessee's schedule next year, I see 9-3. You know, maybe if they get, you know, Joe Milton keeps the football inside Neyland Stadium, 9-3. You know, maybe 10 wins. We'll see. But I think setting that tone with Josh Heupel, with the amount of money, you put him in that different tier. And that's also, I'll add this, that's also when he goes on the recruiting trail and when he's meeting with, you know, other coaches or whatnot, or going into SEC meetings, they all know he's a $9 million man now. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the Southeastern Conference in college football. And you know what? Treat him, you know, it gives you a different amount of kind of respect, I guess is the best way to put it. And good on Danny White and Don D. Plowman for doing it, because they could have gotten cheap. They could have gone like $7 million or something like that. That wouldn't have made a splash. What they did made a splash, and Tennessee continues to do it.
Well, the other splash comes with Danny White, right? Just based on it's believed that he is now the highest paid SEC AD based on this raise. So Heupel benefits from Beamer, Drinkwitz, Kiffin, and all the raises they received to remain at the universities they're coaching for. Who is going to benefit from Danny White's new contract across the SEC?
I think it's just stability with Tennessee and what they're paying. I think that if you look at the biggest thing too is the money that's about to be in this conference, guys. I mean, the reason why some teams are spending money now is because they know here in 2 years, there's about to be a Brinks truck backed up to every school at the end of every year, dropping off huge bags of cash from television contracts that they are receiving. I think that, you know, you look around at other athletic directors. You know, look at John Cohen, you know, at Auburn, Scott Strickland at Florida. You know, I could go on. Yurachek, Arkansas. You know, you're putting yourself into a spot with Danny White where you're almost doing the same thing with Josh Heupel. You're saying, we think we have one of the best coaches in college football in Josh Heupel. So with Danny White, you're saying, okay, we think we have one of the best athletic directors. We're going to pay him like we think he is one of the best athletic directors in the country. And I think that's a smart move by Tennessee in the long run. I think that, you know, you look at what he has done at the university, and I think he's earned it. But they got to continue. And it's not just football, and it's not just basketball. It's what you're doing with Neyland Stadium. It's what you're doing with Thompson Bowling Arena. You know, getting the baseball stadium redone and actually make it, you know, where you want to go hang out, you know, on a Friday night at the end of February and it's freezing, but it's a really cool environment. Like, he is doing all of those things. So they secured Danny White. They also made a statement to the rest of the country that we think we got the best out there.
Trey Wallace, our guest on OutKick 360. Trey, have you heard anything about the Michigan quarterback and offensive coordinator search currently going on there?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Jonathan. No, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
No, I'm just messing with you. That is that's a position that people should pay attention to T. Martin with the Baltimore Ravens. I think that any job is what's the best way to put this? I think any opportunity that comes available, especially to be able to call an offense is a lot different. You know, when you're a wide receivers coach, you know, if you can be a co-offensive coordinator, I think you always have to listen, Jonathan. You know this. I mean, there are many universities out there that have those co-titles that don't really mean anything. I think at Michigan it actually does. In talking with a few people about that situation, I think that if you can come in and they can find a quarterback's coach that's been there and done that and knows the lay of the land when it comes to college football, I think, you know, T. Martin would be a nice fit. Now, will he take it? You know, if he's offered, that's a completely different story, because we are seeing a changing landscape right now in college football, gentlemen, where these college coaches are wanting to get out. They are wanting to get in the NFL, and they're wanting to get away from the recruiting, the transfer portal, the NIL, everything that goes into it. I can't tell you how many assistant coaches I have spoken with during this past season that are wanting a way to get out of college football. And it's not because they don't like college football. It's because they have no life outside of college football. And I think that's, that's one of the factors, I'll be honest with you, that's kind of one of the reasons why, Martin took the job with the Ravens after talking with him. That's one of the reasons why Bill O'Brien has gotten out of Alabama. It's not just because Nick Saban wanted to shift something off and change something up on offense. Bill O'Brien was tired of dealing with the recruiting stuff and tired of dealing with NIL and transfer. It just got old having to have a conversation, at 10:30 at night with a 17-year-old kid. And the first thing that he's asking you is, how much money am I going to make when I get on campus? Like, these guys are tired of it, and the grind is never ending. And so I think you're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years this change continue to happen, where more college coaches are trying to get out of that area and maybe get into the NFL. And I think that's why you're going to see a couple splash names over the next few years.
I think there probably are a few coaches, I'd put T. Martin maybe in this category, that are the reverse of that they get bored just doing football. And they don't want to just do football all the time, and they actually enjoy recruiting, and they enjoy going to high schools and evaluating kids and doing all that. It's probably a small select few I'm talking about here, Trey, but I'm willing to bet that there are a few coaches like, I kind of miss the college game because I like splitting up the time between hardcore football stuff and, I got to go to Holyoke, Alabama to go recruit this linebacker also and build a relationship with him. That may actually excite some coaches out there.
Chad, that's a perfect example. No, it does. You've got some coaches that love to be on the road, love to recruit. They want to be at Hutchinson Community College in Kansas when it's, 15 degrees outside, and they want to be talking to some of these players and recruits. It's just, there's a different mindset between some. And you know what? And some coaches, maybe they just need a year or two off. Go somewhere, go to the NFL where it's more chill and relax, and, you're home by 6 o'clock at night. You're not having to deal with everything that comes with being a college coach, not just recruiting and not just on the field, everything that goes into it. And in the NFL is a little bit more lax. And a couple of people have told me, you come to work every day in the NFL, I'm working with professionals. I ain't going to go, you're not having to go out there and you're not having to deal with, a college kid's problems and what's going on outside of the football complex. Not that they don't care. It just takes a wear on you. It strains you if you've been doing it for so long. So I do think that, there is that portion that guys love it. They want to do it. And I think with this new change in college football, I do think as though it's going to wear on some and maybe you see it. But it would not surprise me if you see coaches start jumping back from the NFL, back into college, in this place. Just switcheroo now. So, yeah, there is that thing. And I think it benefits too. If you get a high-paying job and the money that's being floated out there right now, why not get back into the game? So it's an interesting question and equation, Chad.
Read more from Trey and check out the Trey Wallace podcast at OutKick.com. Trey, appreciate you.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me so much. And we'll be down at the Senior Bowl next week with full coverage on that. So stick with OutKick 360, and you guys stick with OutKick.com, and I hope you'll have a great weekend.
Look forward to reading that and having you on the show from Mobile next week. Thanks, Trey.
Enjoy it. There is Trey Wallace, OutKick.com. Chad, proving, two things. Number one, I'm always late to the social media viral videos, right?
Yeah.
That's number one. This has apparently been
I'd say both of us fall victim to that at times, where we're kind of late to the trends on social media.
I feel. But this also, when we come back, proving that, at least in Iowa, there is a contest for everything, and it doesn't always involve talent.
This is the one social media viral thing that we didn't have to get Haley in to translate for us, because she's up on the trends, but she's not up on Iowa farm county fair trends that we're about to get into.
That's next on OutKick 360.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, And the next morning, I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in. Their commander takes over the task force. We were in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi-Kanabad, and he wants a briefing on our capabilities. And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is, and all these things. And he's like, "Gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time." And ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over, and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important. But now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell him what we can do. And he goes, "Well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with." So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. Was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go as far as, because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
Armando Salguero joins us. That will be in about 40 minutes. Hour number 2 will include a ton of information on the head coaching searches across the NFL. Frank Reich is back in.
Frank Reich hour coming up.
The Frank Reich hour,
The Jeff Saturday hour is going to be after that.
Maybe. When's the Sean Payton hour going to happen? Probably with Fox.
Maybe when
next
he comes
year.
down from that $25 million that he's been quoting everyone. That's going to cost him.
You get that in college.
May have to come off of that a little bit. Hey, Sean, you're good, but you're more like $18 million a year good.
Crazy. We'll detail that with Armando. That's coming up on OutKick 360. Chad, proving that there is a contest for everything. Here is a video, a viral video. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. If you're like me and you feel old, you haven't seen this until today. This is in Iowa, the husband calling competition.
Hurry up! I don't want to be late. Bob, hurry! Bob, Robert, Dean.
Can you imagine living with these women?
Yoo-hoo! Keith! Yoo-hoo!
Well, this is innovative at least. She's got a bird call.
Clock says
Oh my gosh. Of course her husband's name is Daryl.
Can you hear me? You get yourself in here right now. Come on.
I mean,
You know you're going to be late again, and you know that I want to get there on time.
This lady's a trip.
Right.
so that, I mean,
When I first
pure, like, just ridiculous. The annoyance of that. How could you be with a woman like that?
It's that, well,
Let's just start there.
I got to be very careful here.
Well, no. I don't think Angie calls you like this.
No.
But how annoying must the guy be?
Is the more annoying, the better? Is that your better chance of winning the husband calling competition? Because it sounded like every woman was imitating Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber when he asks if you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world.
Yes.
And he does that weird screeching scream. That's what all of them are doing. I asked Matty Ison here, who's from Iowa. He's an Iowa farm boy.
Yep.
Most of these, Hutton, you know the county fairs well, where you're from. I do too.
Yeah,
Most of these competitions have some sort of merit to it. There's a reason for it, like there's
Right.
some agriculture reason. I asked Matt, I said, I thought they were like showing the strength of their voice to call out when it was dinner time in the fields. So like farmers were out in the fields way back when, and the wife would have to go on the porch and say, Daryl! Or just yell out as loud as they could, and the husband would come in. And Matt,
It's called the dinner bell, not the dinner yell.
Matt completely let me down. He said, I have no idea. I've never heard of this before. I don't know what the reason is for it. So I guess the reason is there is no reason. It's just something silly to do at a county fair or a state fair, or wherever this was.
Fair enough, Chad, with your explanation. But the fact is, these women entered this
Oh,
contest, which makes them, annoying to begin with.
Yeah. What's the prize?
Baseline?
I
don't know.
Last night,
Maybe $600.
a kid at a Tennessee game hit a half-court shot and got $600 to
know.
the Vol Shop, not in cash. He got a $600 gift card to the Vol Shop.
I knew there was a catch to that.
And I'm thinking, I remember they did that at Belmont back in the day. Angie was telling me this when she went there. They'd give him tuition for a semester, free, to Belmont, which is like $25K.
Yeah, it's like
if you hit the half-court shot,
you're going to win $600. Of gift cards to a bunch of crap that you don't need.
Well, even the $600 is enough, and then the gift card on top of it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, someone did point out, which is pretty funny, they said they are cutting a lot of checks up there in Knoxville right now, so they may have to skim a little bit off the top of the promotional budget and just give out gift cards now after they're paying Josh Heupel and Danny White what they're paying.
That can't be the excuse, because in LSU they're paying $1 million more than what they should for their coaches.
Didn't even know it was there.
Yeah, no.
We just found this in the couch cushion here in Baton Rouge. Here's another mill for you, B. Kelly.
Oh, man. And think about the other coaches who were not audited, because there were 3 that were. How nervous are you? You're going back like
Kim Mulkey right now is like, please don't look into my checking account. I'm
Kim
making $2
Mulkey
million
is taking her
extra a year.
team to the state prison. Yeah.
Like scared straight?
Like a team building thing.
Or are they going to play a game in the prison?
I don't know. Is this going to be like Johnny
Davey,
Cash?
I sense a future segment on this. Kim Mulkey goes to the prison.
Headlines next, including Georgetown in 29 games.
college football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Good seeing you.
Coach Mack just leaving the studio, swinging by. Dave McGinnis, OutKick 360 rolls on.
The man rolled in, brought the energy.
I had to lead with that because Chad said, good to see you live on the air. Good to see you too, Chad.
Yeah. Well, Coach Mack was about to be live on air. He was right in front of our camera as we were coming back from break. So
the man does what he wants.
If it's on air or not, I don't care. When Coach Mack leaves or he enters, you greet him and you tell him goodbye. I'll say it on air. I'll do it again. We'll do it anywhere. If he wanted to come in right now and just put his backside up against that camera and have a conversation with us, Hutton, this show doesn't continue as you proceed. When Coach Mack calls, you answer the call. You answer that bell every time. Much like the husband calling contest. When those wives call, You answer. If you're Daryl or Eugene or any of those husbands.
I couldn't answer that call.
Whoever you are with Coach Mack, you answer it.
Oh, one of the best dudes ever. Love the guy. And Dave McGinnis will tell you there's two things he has a lot of: money and hair. And he proves it on a daily basis.
He's the man.
That's right. We will get to details on the AFC and NFC Championship games. That's coming up in 20 minutes. Armando Salguero will join us from OutKick.com. Georgetown snapped a 29-game Big East losing streak, Chad. That's how bad it was at Georgetown and Patrick Ewing.
That's the headline, is Georgetown had a 29-game conference losing streak. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad until I saw the headline when they beat DePaul the other night to snap this losing streak. Patrick Ewing has to be dead man walking at Georgetown right now, I would think.
You think so?
There's also a lot of weird stuff that I read about the infrastructure at Georgetown and just what they're willing to pay and what they're willing to do to be good at basketball again. This is a national power from the 80s under John Thompson in the 90s. I mean, this is the school of Patrick Ewing and Allen Iverson and Alonzo Mourning, and the list goes on, to Kimbe Mutombo. And they were feared in the world of college basketball. They're in a great part of Washington, D.C. Not a lot of terrific parts of D.C. right now. They're in a good one in Georgetown. It's a great school. It's just odd to me, first off, that anyone can go through a 29-game conference losing streak. That's difficult to accomplish. You get half your games at home. You're bound to catch someone that's had a really off night shooting. And you catch someone, but for 29 straight games, they couldn't beat a soul.
Vanderbilt football didn't go that long in the SEC.
And it's way more difficult when you're Vanderbilt in the SEC to win a football game.
Yes.
Basketball, again, I mean, you're getting, whether it's 16 or 18, you're getting either 8 or 9 home games a year. Cracks at it to get it right. And to lose 29 straight overall is just ridiculous.
Georgetown, and we should also throw in Vandy. We mentioned Vandy. Those two basketball programs should not be at the level that they're playing at currently. Both of them.
No. Now, Vandy is
they're what, 10 and 10?
They're
like 500 right now.
Yeah, they had such a bad non-conference. It's not going to matter really what they do in the SEC. They got a couple nice wins in the SEC. They recently won at Georgia, but Georgia doesn't look that good. They beat Arkansas at home, which was a nice win. Had a great chance at a big win over Kentucky, but lost pretty big.
They're 3-4 in the conference,
They're respectable, I guess, in the SEC right now. But no, that's a program that needs to be better. In year 4 to Jerry Stackhouse. And what's the common denominator here? 2 former NBA stars. One's leading their alma mater. The other's not. Not working out. The other one that's really sort of strange right now, who's done a much better job, Juwan Howard has done great.
Fantastic job.
At Michigan, they're not very good.
Well, but at least we've seen Juwan Howard reach that level.
Yeah, but what's crazy about Juwan Howard, this is kind of the inverse of the Rick Barnes argument. They drastically underachieved last year, drastically with their roster. Multiple NBA guys in that roster. They got an 11 seed. Tennessee got very unlucky as a 3 seed to match up with 11 seed Michigan, who was probably 2 or 3 seed level talent, and they lost a close game in the second round. That leads to what is marked as failure for Rick Barnes to not get any further than the first weekend with that team a year ago. And for Juwan Howard, that success sort of erased what was a disappointing season for the most part, just to get that win over Tennessee and get the upset as the 11 over the 3. And I look at them this year, and they lost a lot from last year, but they still have Hunter Dickinson. They've got some really good players. They got his son, Jet Howard, is a star. They're just average.
And these guys are getting paid. We know that Juwan Howard is worthy of the salary, though. I guess that's my overall point. Stackhouse, we don't know the full salary based on the private institution. Same goes for Patrick Ewing, too. But, Chad, you and I were discussing this yesterday prior to the show. Stackhouse is getting paid more, and we haven't seen results at a program that has seen solid play and plays in a gym that's historic, and it's just not the same vibe or feel whatsoever. Same with Georgetown in a 29-game losing streak in their conference.
It's nuts. Those are 2 academically inclined institutions in Vanderbilt and Georgetown that we've seen match up in some big NCAA tournament games in the past. In fact, one in the Sweet 16 that both Vandy and Georgetown fans will remember. the Jeff Green walked
Yes,
game,
yes.
where he hit the game winner as time was expiring, but walked to get there. That Vandy fans are still upset about. I don't blame them. They played another time in the NCAA tournament too, I believe. But I'm with you. Big metropolitan areas for both of them. Private, academic-minded standing, and just not good for a number of years now. And with Jerry Stackhouse and Vandy, nothing's going to change there. He just got a contract extension. I'd still be surprised, even if, for whatever reason, Georgetown is strapped for cash, that they don't make a move after this season and go in a different direction.
David Hookstead with a story at OutKick. Marcus Stokes, who was the 4-star quarterback recruit for the 2023 class with the Florida Gators and a commitment there, and he had his offer pulled after he filmed himself saying the N-word while rapping on social media or a live stream. He is now he's now going to play for an HBCU. You want to talk about changing the narrative? Playing at Albany State and playing for an HBCU after having your offer pulled by Florida. He's got a chance to do that whenever he plays quarterback for the Rams.
So we're 10 years removed from Riley Cooper shouting the word that this kid shouted at a Kenny Chesney concert and it being on video, and he was saying it to someone, not just repeating the words of a rap song, which I think this kid was doing. Riley Cooper kept playing in the NFL. He wasn't canceled over it. Now, he faced a lot of backlash. When you say Riley Cooper today, that's still what most people remember was that. And so he paid the price.
That was 10 years ago.
For that mistake. I just see this, and I'm anti canceling people, especially when they're 17, 18 years old.
Yes.
Over something they do that's dumb. Especially so when he's rapping the words to a song. Is it stupid? Yes. Should he have done it? No. Should he have done it on camera? Especially not. Should Florida revoke his scholarship offer? No. I don't think they should. I think they made a mistake by doing that. I think you could easily explain it away as a kid singing along to a song, being stupid, doing something dumb with that. And the fact that now you have an HBCU that's offering him a scholarship, I think shows a level of forgiveness and understanding that is sorely lacking right now in society.
Didn't he play at Tebow's high school, this kid?
Tebow was homeschooled.
No, he played quarterback at...
he played at Nice.
Yes.
But he was homeschooled.
Well, he played at...
that was a big controversy, was he didn't go to the high school he played at.
I think Stokes played at the same... That was the notoriety and the connection with the Gators at the time. But yeah, a chance to really change the narrative on a guy that was 17 was headed for an SEC quarterback position and had it pulled for something he did on social.
Again, I think it was an extreme reaction from Florida.
Oh, of course.
To do what they did. And in my cynical brain, the moment it happened, I thought, well, this is convenient. They just landed Jaden Rashada. And now they're conveniently kicking this guy to the curb for this video.
Yeah.
He was suddenly expendable once they got a better quarterback option in that class. Oh, whoops. Now they don't have either one of them because Jaden Rashada held out for his NIL money.
Napier has been cleaning house, though, since he got there. Right? Like the leading tackler for his defense in the middle of the year. He kicked him off the team. So I think it's also, if he's trying to change the locker room culture of what was there, he's also, right? He's got to... The Rashada thing's weird, though, based on the collective with the Gators and what was apparently offered and signed. Yeah. Based on what Napier's been doing.
That I chalk up to the NIL, the collective being dumb and not Napier. I don't know that I blame Billy Napier for anything that went on with the Gator collective.
But didn't they initially try to keep him around, though? Like they tried to get him to stay with the letter of intent.
Well, they tried to get him to stay and just take a lot less money.
But that doesn't,
he's saying,
I don't know,
we
that
signed a contract
like what
that you're going to pay me more.
Over the last year with the guys and the mindset and the commitment.
Well, he was getting rid of some pretty good players who were kind of dogging it at times.
Yeah, that quit on the previous season, too.
That had attitude and that he wanted out. So there was a little bit of getting rid of the weeds, picking through the weeds at Florida through this. I don't know that I see this as that. unless there was something separate with this kid with an attitude issue, that this made it more public and convenient to cut the scholarship offer and move on, because this to me is just straight up cancel culture 2022.
Yeah, and there's no.
It's a simple way to put it.
Florida's got to regret
that's what
this
it
now,
is.
though, right? I mean, based on the situation that they have. To what you're saying about Rashada.
Well,
and the reaction to it.
They had John Kitna's son, who's going possibly to prison.
Yes.
They lost Rashada. They've got Graham Mertz. They've got the kid who started in the bowl game who looked bad, Jack Miller. But who knows what he's going to be or become. Yeah, they have no depth right now at quarterback.
Ted, 3 years ago, Kobe Bryant on this day was a helicopter crash. It feels longer than that to me for some reason.
Me too.
It feels like 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, it feels like we'll be talking about this as the 5-year anniversary of that happening.
We were in Miami. We were about to go to Miami for the Super Bowl when all that went down.
It was the weekend before we left, I think, for Miami.
Yeah.
That it happened.
And it happened during the middle of the AFC and NFC Championship games.
I remember, in fact, watching with you in Miami at the Super Bowl, the Lakers game.
Yeah.
When they returned home with the Kobe Bryant special game, which was really cool.
And then in stadium at Hard Rock, they had a massive moment of silence, but then a big tribute to him in stadium at the Super Bowl prior to Kansas City and San Francisco playing, which can also be the Super Bowl matchup this year in Phoenix.
Kobe Bryant's one of those names that when you just hear it, you immediately think back to the tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, there's some people that you hear the name and you think, oh, what happened? No, you know immediately what happened with Kobe Bryant with the helicopter crash. So, yeah, crazy that it's been 3 years. It feels like a lot longer.
Armando Salguero is coming up. We're going to preview the matchups, AFC, NFC, and we'll try to really pin down beyond Mahomes and the injury. And by the way, Mahomes looks pretty good jogging around on the practice field yesterday. Beyond the quarterback storyline, what does this matchup come down to, and why have the Bengals had the success over the last 3 games between Cincinnati and Kansas City? Armando is next on OutKick 360.
NIL, when it comes to Florida, has been a story over the last couple of weeks because of Jaden Rashada. And you put out a great piece with a timeline on kind of how things went down, who kind of was the one involved in this, I don't know, situation with Jaden Rashada. And so let's kind of dive into that. Coming off your reporting, and I don't want you to give everything away because I want people to go and read it. But what we're kind of looking into this thing for the last couple of months, man, what were some of your big takeaways? Maybe shocked you, or you just, when you dug deep into it, you're like, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
Well, I think that's probably the first thing to note is this has been ugly publicly for 2 weeks. But as you said there, it's been going on for 2 months. And I think the big thing is, and I didn't really touch on it in the story, was it was so interesting to follow Florida and Miami this year. Obviously, you've got John Ruiz, a billionaire, pretty deep pockets, and he's just throwing money and caution to the wind. Wanted to see his Hurricanes get back to the top, and there were so many instances, more than I can remember since I've been covering the team since 2013, where Florida and Miami were 1, 2, or in the top 3 with commits in the same class. And I think Florida just came out second place or third place to Miami so many times. And I think what precipitated this whole incident was Florida trying to get a win back. And this was right after Cormani McClain shocked the world. And it was right after Florida had gotten back into conversations with Jaden, because prior to him coming to Miami, they had rescinded the scholarship offer. I think saw the writing on the wall. Jaden had told them, hey, I'm going to go to Miami. And I think what you got was Florida and boosters or collective people around Florida like, hey, we need to get a win. And I think you saw, really a year-long battle between Florida and Miami, collectives and boosters, that Miami was winning. I think you saw Florida try to get back into it. And whether the money was never there and there was miscommunication, or if the money was promised and then somebody came off, and was like, hey, that's a lot of money. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I don't know. We probably need to get to litigation and some discovery to find that out. But for whatever reason, the money was not going to be there. And the Gator Collective kind of realized that, and with their name on the line and their name on the contract, terminated the contract.
Why do you think we've gotten into besides the rivalry between Miami and Florida, Cristobal coming down to Miami, Billy Napier's at Florida now. He got Norvell, a lot of people thought was hanging on by a thread at Florida State. Now he kind of turns it around in 2022. Okay, so he's set for the next year or so, maybe 2 years. We'll see. Well, why do you think it turned into a pissing match between Miami and Florida? It's like when NIL struck, it felt like those two teams, and not Florida State. I'm not trying to diminish Florida State, but it felt like Miami and Florida were just going back and forth and seeing who could either outbid the other, or B, take it one step further when it comes to recruiting. Is it because of Ruiz, and is it because of some of the boosters at Florida? Is it that simple?
I mean, nothing is black and white in our world, and you're probably looking at way more colors than even black, white, and gray when it comes to NIL and in this scenario. I mean, this is a landscape that Nevin Shapiro would have thrived in. Wouldn't have had to be so sneaky.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Nathaniel Hackett is now the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. And, Chad, the dots are easy to connect here with Aaron Rodgers. We were doing it last year with the Denver Broncos. Of course, that didn't happen. And we know how bad the offense was. They averaged just under 17 points per game in Denver last year, which is the worst offense in the NFL for putting points on the board. But now he's the OC in New York, and we know that ownership has said they are willing to pay a price to go get a veteran quarterback.
Are they willing to pay the price of 2 first-round picks, which I suspect will be
they fit the
cost?
AFC criteria.
They do. I believe the countdown is now on for Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, because when they hired Aaron Rodgers' ping pong pal, they knew exactly what they were doing when they did that. So A-Raj is about to be jersey bound. That's my guess.
Armando Salguero about to join us from OutKick.com. I'm with you. They also, they've made some other hires as well, but the dots are very easy to connect, and I don't know why you would make this move. It's a very similar offense that Hackett is known for from the Mike LaFleur offense and the OC they just fired. I don't know why you make it's not a lateral move. You want to stay the same, but you're certainly not staying the same at QB. Armando joins us now. Armando, your thoughts, I'm sure you heard part of that discussion at least, on the Nathaniel Hackett hire in New York.
Yeah, so I guess I come at it from a different point of view, gentlemen, and that is as a reporter.
Yes.
And I can just imagine if it doesn't go exactly right for Nathaniel Hackett, if it goes anywhere close to how it did in Denver last year, the Nathaniel Hackett weekly press conferences with the New York media is going to be lunch served every week with the New York media. Because, I mean, God bless my brethren in Green Bay. They are very thoughtful. They get very great, unique, in-depth answers out of their interviewees. God bless the guys in Denver. Same thing. But the New York Hacks, they will go after this dude and they will carve him up and serve him if he doesn't get that offense right.
And it's why I think, Armando, that it's kind of step one of this transition to go for the trade for Aaron Rodgers, because I don't know how you bring in Nathaniel Hackett, quite frankly, and expect him to work with anyone but Aaron Rodgers and have success. I mean, if it's someone new or a rookie quarterback, or is this the guy to mold Mike White into a star? You're not bringing on Nathaniel Hackett. You're bringing in Nathaniel Hackett because Aaron Rodgers likes him. What do you think about that?
So you guys think that Aaron Rodgers has made up his mind, he's going to play and he wants to play in New York?
I think Aaron Rodgers loves drama, and I think he loves keeping people in suspense, and deep down, he wants to play again, and he wants to play for a different team, not the Green Bay Packers that can compete for a Super Bowl.
And let me just add,
I don't know
Armando,
that it's necessarily the Jets, but that's my thought.
I don't think he's made up his mind on where he wants to play and that it's going to be the Jets either. But I do buy into the fact that the Broncos went after Hackett thinking that they could get Rodgers last year, and they end up with Russell Wilson. And I don't think there's any coincidence that they announced that trade is going down, 50-something minutes after Rodgers announced he's returning to the Packers. I think the Jets are falling for the trap as well.
The old Hackett banana in the tailpipe trick.
Hey, yeah, absolutely.
Here's the thing. I kind of believe Aaron Rodgers when he says he doesn't know yet.
Okay.
In fact, I don't kind of believe him. I outright believe him. That dude is still, you look at him, you hear him compared to how he normally speaks, there is uncertainty there. He's not 100%. And he doesn't feel like he needs to be 100% right now because no one's pushing him, certainly not the Green Bay Packers, to make a decision. Because if the Packers, if they feel like they push him, they might get the wrong answer. And they don't want the wrong answer. I know there's a lot of speculation out there that the Packers would like the trade compensation. There's a lot of, excuse me, there's a lot of speculation out there that Jordan Love, has won over the building. Let's just be clear. Jordan Love is not Aaron Rodgers, and the trade compensation is not Aaron Rodgers. Sorry. So the Green Bay Packers, they don't want to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Let's just be clear about that.
Armando Salguero with us, and as he grabs some water, hopefully he's got that, or he's muting his line, which is very polite of Armando. You can read his work at OutKick.com.
Armando's a pro's pro. He knows to mute the mic before he has a coughing fit. That takes a level of professionalism that we're not used to on this show, so we appreciate it.
Very flexible there with all of the Zoom tricks that Armando's using here. Before we get to the preview of the championship games, because I want to leave plenty of time for that, let's spend 5 minutes or so on the coaching carousel and the discussion today. Frank Reich's the first coach hired, and it's by Carolina. I don't think any of us thought that Reich would be the first coach hired in this process because the focus has been elsewhere for sure, surrounding Sean Payton. But let's start with Reich. Why Frank Reich over Steve Wilkes if it came down to those two?
It did come down to those two, and one of them is an offensive coach with experience and a history of success. and the other one's not an offensive coach with a history of success. It's as simple as that. The Carolina Panthers, the reason that they've not been a good team is because their quarterback position has been abysmal, no matter who's manning it. Regardless of whether it's been Sam Darnold, Cam Newton of late, PJ Walker, Baker Mayfield, all those guys ultimately failed the franchise. And the franchise owner, Dave Tepper, understands that unless he gets that one position right, it doesn't matter that he's got, a nice defensive front seven. It doesn't matter that his back end of the secondary is strong. It doesn't matter that they can plug and play running backs. What matters is they can't win without a good quarterback. And you can't have a good quarterback without a good quarterback guru type coach. I would say to you that the Panthers are following the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of trail.
Okay.
In that they've got a guy who has won in the NFL, just like the Jaguars did with Doug Peterson. They know that they need a quarterback type guy, just like the Jaguars did with Doug Peterson. The difference is Doug Peterson walks in and lo and behold, there's Trevor Lawrence.
Well, Chad.
Frank Reich is going to walk in and lo and behold, there's nobody.
And Armando, that leads exactly the question I wanted to ask you, because Doug Peterson inherited Trevor Lawrence because the Jags had the number 1 overall pick and took Trevor Lawrence. What do you think about the possibilities of what the Panthers would have to possibly trade up to number 1 overall and draft Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud if they wanted? Or do you think they'd be content to stick at number 9 and take Will Levis or whatever best available quarterback is there at that spot?
Yeah, they are at number 9. And based off of what I'm hearing from scouts, they are, are we sure that Bryce Young is going to be number 1?
Not positive, but he would be the leader in the clubhouse. I'd say him or C.J. Stroud will be number 1.
Bryce Young has the best talent, the best resume, and not the best body. He is short, he is thin, and that has a way of showing up in the NFL. And so whoever is taking him is banking on what? Having great protection for him and him getting in the weight room and gaining 15 or 20 pounds. And he's still going to be short. So does that a number 1 overall pick make? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And more importantly, the scouts that I've spoken with, they're not sure. And I know that it goes against everything that everyone is expecting, because Bryce Young is not a good or a great, he is a generational college quarterback, right? But generational college quarterbacks don't translate to the NFL sometimes.
Armando Salguero, our guest. What was the market really like for Sean Payton? And I'll tie it in with the Panthers, because to what Chad's asking, if they're thinking about trading up to number 1 to get a quarterback, it doesn't have to be Bryce Young, but to get ahead of Houston, could they pay the price that it would take to trade for Sean Payton in their own division with the Saints, right? I don't think they could. Also, what is it, the Broncos are bust? And what about this report that he's not getting along with one of the members of their ownership group there?
Yeah, I like the Broncos are bust there. That's a pun. You know that, right,
well,
Jonathan?
Yes. But
get it? Busting Broncos? Yep. Get it?
No doubt. But do you think it's just the Broncos and that's it? Are there any other teams truly in on this possibility that Sean Payton's coming out of media to be a head coach again?
Why is Sean Payton not the first coach hired? He was the most decorated. He is available and been available for a year.
Yep.
Anybody that would have been interested could have easily done their due diligence on him. there's reasons why. And the reason is Sean Payton has asks that he wants met. And I get it, rightfully so, right? Because he wants to go to the next situation and be 100% success. And to do that, you've got to get your people and your situation looking right. And you've got to get, again, and I hate to harp on it, the quarterback situation looking right. Does the quarterback situation look good in Carolina? No. Does it look great in Houston? No. Does it look good in Denver? No. No, it doesn't. Regardless of whether you think that Russell Wilson is what we saw last year was a one-off, or regardless of whether you think he's fallen off the table. It doesn't matter. What matters is what Sean Payton thinks, and right now, he's not hired for a reason, because he wanted the job that he's not going to be offered, which is the job in Los Angeles, coaching the Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert. And everything else is a step back and a step down. And everything else comes with, I would say to you, look, if you've ever asked a girl out on a date and, you know, it's like, do you ask the prettiest, smartest, you know, whatever, the one with the car, the nice car that will lend it out to you? You want that one, right? You want, if you're in high school, that's the one you want.
No doubt.
But what you got, and what Sean Payton has a choice of right now, is an okay girl. She has braces. She, you know.
Real sweetheart, though. Real sweetheart.
You're saying it's not Dallas.
Great personality.
Yeah.
She's got a bike, a bicycle. Built for two, maybe.
Mode of transportation.
And the homecoming queen is dating Brandon Staley. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And so that's why Sean Payton right now is unemployed still in the NFL.
Brandon Staley.
Who tagged him for homecoming king? Who knew?
I know.
Who knew that was going to happen? Most
popular in the yearbook, in the annual. Armando, one more on the coaching carousel here, and then we'll preview the games. So Jim Irsay reportedly wants Jeff Saturday as his full-time coach. That and the reports also out of Indy are that he wasn't in on every meeting in the first go-around for the interviews. Irsay, I'm talking about. If Irsay wants Saturday and they've already applied the Rooney Rule to their interview process, why are they bringing back 7 coaches for a second round of interviews if Irsay's going to hire Jeff Saturday?
Right, because it feels like Jim Irsay let the general manager do his due diligence, and the first round was for the general manager, and who will have to work day to day with whomever they pick. Yep. Regardless of whether it's Jeff Saturday or 4 or 5 other guys. And Jim Irsay has a feel for what he wants to do. I get the feeling he probably wanted to do Jim Harbaugh, but didn't want to go to the extent that it was required to actually get Jim Harbaugh, which would have included, you know, a new general manager. Having said all this, Jeff Saturday, I love Jeff Saturday. He's a good guy, great guy. Every time you talk to him, smart guy, but he's an on-the-job trainee. And he continues to be that if he is hired full-time. He was an on-the-job trainee last year, and we kind of give him props for what? For beating the Raiders. But that was the only game he won. When Frank Reich handed over the team, they were 3-5. And they finished something like, 4-13 or something like that. So the on-the-job trainee got less out of the team than what the guy you fired was getting. it just feels like Jim Irsay, he's trying to outsmart everybody. And look, if there's 60,000 people in your stadium, 65,000 people in your stadium, and they all think that you should do A and you do B, you're probably wrong. They're probably right. It's as simple as that. Jim Irsay is not smarter than you or me, and yet he thinks he is. And we're going to see what he does. But if he is smart, he will get someone who is an up-and-comer or someone with experience, or an up-and-comer with experience who has actually called plays and led rooms. Jeff Saturday, great guy, but not ready.
Armando Salguero, our guest. Let's start in the NFC. We'll go in the order of the kickoffs. San Francisco and Philadelphia. Defense for the 49ers, outstanding. Same goes for Philly. But this Philadelphia offense came out guns blazing against the Giants. What's the feel you have for this in the matchup? Because unlike Kansas City and Cincinnati, we haven't seen these two teams square off in the regular season. What do you make of the Brock Purdy storyline going to Philly and having to win on the road, and the 49ers defense matching up with the firepower of what the Eagles possess?
Look, so let's just go to the least common denominator. When that game between the Eagles and the 49ers is over, there will be two storylines. Number one, quarterback A is living a fairy tale story. Second storyline, quarterback B was defrocked as the fairy tale princess. Why? Because at the beginning of this year, no one thought Brock Purdy would be in the NFC Championship game. At the beginning of this year, no one thought Jalen Hurts would be in the NFC Championship game. As a matter of fact, I was at Eagles practices in the preseason, and I was told, this is a good team, a really good team, lots of talent, and we'll see what Jalen Hurts is about. And if he's not about what we need him to be about, we'll replace him. So that's the Eagles thinking at the beginning of the year. They weren't, Jalen Hurts is our guy, and we're absolutely sure of it. They were not absolutely sure. And unless he takes them to the Super Bowl, they will remain unsure. Because regardless of what he's done so far, you got to win the big ones. You know, Josh Allen started this year as a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. He finished the year as a guy that can't get into the AFC Championship game. The game, and they drive narratives, and that's what Josh Allen is now. 2 years in a row, unable to get into the AFC Championship game. Brock Purdy, young guy, but can he get you to the AFC Championship, NFC Championship, the Super Bowl, or maybe we got to rethink this next year again. It's always the last game that signs off on the narrative, and the narrative for those two guys are going in totally different directions.
Looking at the AFC Championship game, what is reasonable to expect from Patrick Mahomes, given what we saw him dealing with after the ankle injury in this past game?
Yeah, he's going to tough it out, and it's reasonable that he's going to play well. I mean, he should play well. He's got a very good team around him, arguably a great team around him, and a very good offensive line around him. What is not reasonable is that we won't see crazy Patrick Mahomes where he's jumping and throwing completions 40 yards down the field, or he's, running, out of the pocket and against his body completing 30-yard passes. That Patrick Mahomes probably isn't showing up. It's going to be a more conservative, more scripted Patrick Mahomes that we're going to see.
Are we overlooking Kansas City given that description of Mahomes? Are we I say we, just the public, are we looking at Cincinnati and saying, well, they've got 3 straight wins by 3 points over KC with a healthy Mahomes. How can they possibly lose this game at Arrowhead? What else about Kansas City, Armando, wins them this game if they're going back to the Super Bowl?
Andy Reid.
Okay. Yeah.
He's done some things, and he knows some stuff. And he gets guys to line up and do a little, carousel on people.
Wait, Mahomes can't do that now. Mahomes can't do that now.
Well,
on one leg, he can hop on the one leg and do it.
On the ride.
Yes.
You got to respect Andy Reid and what he is able to do. You have to respect that coaching staff that is very talented. It has 2 former NFL head coaches on it, in Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, and Nagy, who was in Chicago. It has, arguably a future NFL head coach in Eric Bieniemy. Their offensive line is good. Their playmakers are good. Their defensive line is good. I mean, where are they bad? That's the point. Where are they bad? The Bengals are amazing at receiver. The Chiefs are good everywhere. And so they are just a very balanced, good team that plays very well together. And I forgot, they've got a pretty amazing tight end. And I talked to Rob Gronkowski today, and I asked him, Rob, you tell me, George Kittle or Travis Kelce, you're starting a team tomorrow. Which one are you picking? And I would tell you what his answer was, except the story comes out tomorrow on OutKick.com, and that's where you'll get the answer.
Can't wait to read it.
Can't wait to read about his comments on Travis Kelce at OutKick.com, Armando. Final thing, though. You mentioned Andy Reid. Both of the defensive coordinators in this game are really intriguing. And with Jones up front, Chris Jones for Kansas City, if they collapse the pocket on Burrow, that's how, to me, they're winning this game. And it is a depleted Cincinnati O-line. It didn't play a factor against Buffalo. It can in this game. And I think the defensive coordinator matchup against the opposing offense, where we know Cincinnati, Anarumo has been awesome. So has Spagnuolo, though, in the postseason runs that they've had recently.
Lou is amazing. Lou is a friend, and I wish him all the best. I don't know many defensive coordinators that are just better in game and at halftime than Lou Anarumo. He's just very outstanding at it. He just gets it. He sees it, and he doesn't have to study tape. He doesn't have to get all the, he sees it.
There's a feel
in
for
real time and adjusts, which is a gift.
Yes.
Because some guys, it doesn't work like that. And I think he is great at that. And you said if Chris Jones collapses the pocket, I would say when Chris Jones collapses that pocket. But you know what? Joe Burrow and the Bengals, this isn't their first rodeo at having their pocket collapsed.
Well, that's fair too. Yeah, or facing Chris Jones.
They are expert at having collapsed pockets, and collapsed pockets don't bother Joe Burrow a whole lot.
Are you headed to either game?
I am going to Kansas City.
Okay.
Yes, so I will be wearing much more than this, dry fit.
I think you should stick with it. Don't fix what isn't broke, Armando. That dry fit works for you. Just wear it.
Well, yeah, I will, and then 14 other things on top of it.
There
Absolutely.
You go. Layer up. That's right.
Always enjoy having you on, man, and we can't wait to read the story tomorrow with your conversation with Gronk, and, of course, all the coverage this weekend for the AFC Championship game.
Thank you for putting up with my coughing fit. I appreciate it.
No, you handled it well. You were the pro there, not us. Armando Salguero. Follow him. You can follow him on social. It's very simple. Just his name. Very easy. Yep. He's one of the lucky ones that has his name for social.
The early people to get to Twitter.
Right, yeah.
Get his name completely protected.
That's right. And, of course, read his work at OutKick.com. We've been paying for water for a long time now. was it Jay-Z? No, it was 50 Cent. It was 50 Cent that started vitamin water and sold it to Coca-Cola. And the idea that you have to pay for water is, kind of stupid, right? Bottled water. But I think this version of buying water maybe proves all of us ignorant when it comes to trying to save what was Splash Mountain and the amount that people are paying for the water of Splash Mountain. Details next on OutKick 360.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, and the next morning I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in. Their commander takes over the task force. We were in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi-Kanabad, and he wants a briefing on our capabilities. And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is and all these things. And he's like, gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time, and ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important, but now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell him what we can do. And he goes, well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with. So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. I was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go as far as, because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
Chad, we pay for a lot of things that, you know, you can get for free. Water is certainly one of them. And Disney fans are selling their alleged water from Splash Mountain for $200. The lines were ridiculous for the final day of Splash Mountain as Disney shuts it down. And
why is Splash Mountain being shut down?
Well, I was listening to Clay. It references something from like the 1940s or something. It's being canceled, more or less. I don't know. I had no idea about anything.
I had a cousin mention this to me over the weekend at our family reunion, and it always just brings to mind this. If someone didn't just point out or write about this being attached to something, no one would have known. I had no idea that there was some sort of cancelable quality about Splash Mountain until someone pointed out. I still don't know what it is.
Yeah, it references a story from some fables from an era, like
a Nazi fable.
No, from like the antebellum era.
Oh, so not from the 40s.
But like the
story was written in the 40s.
Yeah,
maybe?
But it's based on like from the antebellum era.
What you're saying is it's dumb.
Yes.
The reason that it's going away.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like those trying to cancel university fight songs or mascots, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think this. I certainly didn't know anything about Splash Mountain referencing something from, years and years ago.
Well, specifically about selling the water, that's brilliant of the Walt Disney Company to do this, because if there's a market for something and people are dumb enough to spend $200 for a bottle of Splash Mountain water, then you sell that Splash Mountain water.
But these are Disney fans that claim they have the water from Splash Mountain that they're selling for $200. And then that means people are buying it.
Again,
yeah.
If there's a market for dumb people to give you $200, it's smart of whoever does that, the Walt Disney Company or people who claim that they have Splash Mountain water. Hutton, there have been, OnlyFans models and Instagram models who have made a living for years now selling their bath water to people.
Right.
This is just the Disney version of that. The Splash Mountain water is the bath water of Instagram models to many a troubled people out there that want to spend $200 on it.
Fair enough. That's a great point. Yeah, at least
that's what I do. I come in here. You get presented with a story, and you give a great point every time. That's what it is. It's the Instagram model of amusement park rides.
But I think the creepy dude with the bathwater fetish is paid more than $200 for that.
You think he's got a collection of mason jars in his house, and he said, "What's that one up? What's that one up top in the light? Oh, that's Splash Mountain water. That's what that is."
You want a sip?
Below that is Pam Anderson, but that on top,
allegedly,
that's the jewel.
Allegedly,
that's the
Pam
jewel
Anderson.
of my collection. That's Splash Mountain.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude, the Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hour is here. OutKick 360.
Flew by. All of you that
Thursday
doubted
edition.
us getting to this point, how dare you? How dare you doubt us finishing those 2 hours and getting this third and final hour? I mean, it felt like a minute. Hutton. Felt like a minute, this show.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Flown by. And
great job by you.
You as well.
Great
you
job,
as well.
everyone. Good work.
We've got.
In fact, no more show. Hour's over. We did a good enough job today. Pack it up, everyone. We're done.
Well, that wouldn't be fair to
Moonshine time.
Dan Zaszewski. I always say Dan Z. Dan Zaszewski. Am I getting that right?
Dan Zaszewski.
Okay, we'll get it. We'll get it right whenever
you got it
joins
right.
us.
It's a
OutKick.
very Krzyzewski type pronunciation, but the K, much like the K in Krzyzewski being silent in his name.
We'll chat with him because he has texted with Ryan Tannehill, who suffered, of course, the high ankle sprain throughout the season, not once but twice. He injured the ankle. Tried to play on it, then couldn't, and had the surgery. Couldn't come back from it in time to return for the Titans against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 18 in a win-and-in scenario. But he can relate to the injury that Patrick Mahomes is going through. We'll discuss that coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll also have big things on both NFL games for the championship matchups a bit later as well. Turns out everything was a prank. And look, this felt like, when I saw this headline, it felt like a fraternity initiation, request by one of the brothers for a pledge on campus. But last night at Duquesne, an Uber Eats delivery man went on the court in the middle of the basketball game to deliver Uber Eats. I think this is a classic prank, classic, whatever you want to say, hazing. I don't know. It could have been anything. Turns out it's a prank. But the idea is new. And, Chad, it didn't involve a member of PETA protesting something at a Minnesota Timberwolves game. So, no harm, no foul.
So, when I saw the original video of it, and I think we're going to see it also, but when the guy walks across the photo.
There he is, yeah.
When he's, in the very edge of the court, I thought, if someone was so stupid to just deliver food in there, they'd probably just walk in the middle and not just barely walk onto the court. So for whatever reason, I thought this is someone doing it on purpose to not overly affect the game, to walk behind everyone in the corner and act like they're delivering something to the game. So I initially sort of thought, man, this seems like it could be a work. And that we could be getting played by this. But it turns out that we were.
But he was also, like, this person's also delivering real food to someone.
They played it out well. I mean, they got.
That's why I was like, is this one of the, for Phi Kappa Psi has food delivered by a pledge?
Right. If you want in this fraternity, your final hurdle.
You bring me Panda Express.
Look, Loyola Chicago's in town tonight at the Duquesne Center, wherever this game was played, at Duquesne, whatever they call their arena. I need you to walk on the court and pretend deliver Uber Eats to someone on press row or to the team and walk across the court during the game. Maybe it was some sort of pledging initiation ritual.
And there's also someone that snapped a photo of this guy. He's like posing with his delivery, and he has a little microphone on his not his jacket, but
so
underneath
he
the
was
pullover.
Trying to record everything going on?
It appears that way, yeah.
Was there no video of this game? I immediately saw this, and I didn't see. Everyone just had a still photo of it. I'm thinking, everything's on video now. Does Duquesne Athletics not carry the game live on stream somewhere, even if it's not on ESPN+?
There's video of it somewhere, I'm sure.
I haven't seen the video. I'm amazed that we couldn't see a video.
But the screenshot looks like a video screenshot. That's certainly not an iPhone taking that photo.
No, I wanted to see.
70,000 weren't in this arena to snap that photo.
I have not seen. I've seen this tweet, and I've seen the still photo that we're showing right now to our visual audience. I've not seen video of it anywhere. And I immediately thought about Bally Sports falling apart, and everything is going to streaming in some way. And I thought every college basketball game is on somewhere. I feel like if you play Division I college basketball, you are going to be hard-pressed not to be viewed in some capacity, even if it's at the university's website. So I wanted to see the actual reaction of the officials blowing the play dead and going against someone.
There's commentary as well on YouTube right now.
Okay, so there is video.
Yes.
We just don't have it.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, here's what we'll do. We'll watch the video during the break, and we'll come back and give our synopsis of the video and play-by-play.
But so, like, there are, I don't want to say thousands. I don't know how many people were at this game. Students, plural, were all filming this on their phones as well from around the arena. So
they knew what was up.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a fraternity initiation type thing. Or whatever it is, like just some random request.
I wonder if, is this person a student that did this, I'm guessing?
No, I guess. I don't know.
I wonder if they faced discipline.
They didn't kick him out of the game, from what I understand.
Well, was he ever in the game? I mean, or did he just have to leave? Or did he walk from the stands and do it? Right? I don't know that he was actually in the game.
He actually had McDonald's with him. He delivered food from outside to someone. You see what I'm saying?
But he bought a ticket and walked through. I just have a lot of questions. I don't know why I'm asking all these questions. It was a prank. But still, if it's a student, I wonder if something happens to the student at some point. Or if they're going to not allow them to attend sporting events on campus. Something's going to happen.
I don't know. I mean,
it's funny, but also I understand the university. I'm going to sound like the principal in Animal House here, or the dean of students. I understand a university having a problem with that. You don't want to encourage that. Someone that's a student or someone walking into your arena or playing surface on a prank to stop the action. That's not something you want to be known for, right? So,
for sure.
There's going to be some sort of discipline, I feel like. There has to be.
Or they could turn this into like the Nashville Predators throw a catfish on the ice every game now. You know, you just have the honorary Uber Eats delivery.
That would be funny. Like, who's going to be – it's like the 12th man at Texas A&M. Who's going to be the 6th man for Duquesne, and the 6th man delivers fast food?
And then you sell the sponsorship.
During the game. First TV timeout, under 16 timeout. The under 16 timeout every home game at Duquesne is caused by someone interrupting play by delivering Uber Eats across midcourt.
Yeah,
and that's the honorary person.
Please
recognize our 6th man of the game. He's 4.0 GPA, biomedicine. Just someone who earned it in the student body, and they get to bring the food. They get to select the fast food they deliver.
No, the university would definitely sell that sponsorship.
But sell multiple sponsorships. They get to pick from one of 4 different fast food brands they get to bring in.
Yeah,
I mean, now we're on to something.
Like. Yeah,
we took something that was stupid and isolated, and now this could be Duquesne's thing.
But they'll likely just ban him.
The Duquesne coach could recruit players and say, have you heard about our 6-man tradition that we have here, where we have someone deliver Uber Eats in-game every time? It's one of the best and most classic traditions in all of college basketball. If you thought the Cameron Crazies were great, wait until you hear about our fast food 6th man every game. This has legs, Hutton. We can make this work.
And unfortunately, they'll probably just say, never come back.
Yeah, you know what? You're expelled.
Yeah.
Have fun at
and the
Loyola
person that lets you
Chicago.
onto the court, you're gone too.
Right.
That'll be their reaction. We do have a head coaching hire in the NFL. Frank Reich is the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Dan Quinn has informed the teams that he's interviewed with, this will be now the 2nd consecutive year where he has interviewed with multiple franchises. He is going to return to Dallas as the defensive
The
coordinator.
man loves Dallas. Really loves the Metroplex.
Loves Dallas and that defense and doesn't like the offers that he's getting, I guess. To me, he's the next in line after Sean Payton with some of the interviews, other than D'Amico Ryans. But, you know, there's a report out, and I'll read this just straight from Twitter on Sean Payton. The Panthers no longer an option for Sean Payton. Of course, that's because Frank Reich is their head coach. And there was an issue with Payton's interview with the Broncos. Payton likes the idea of coaching Russell Wilson and having that defense, but fears a potential power struggle with a member of the ownership group, source says, which is bizarre because the power is with the owner of the organization. That's just Sean Payton wants to buy into the team. Like, you can't. There, at some point, the owner is going to get whatever they want, and a member of the only two I know, there's Walton and of course members of his immediate family, and Condoleezza Rice, who was in on the interviews for or still is for the Broncos opening. She's among those in the room, along with George Payton, their general manager. If that's the issue, like, what is Sean Payton asking for?
Well, he's asking for everything. I mean,
he wants ownership power.
Obviously, wants GM power.
Right.
You know, final say over personnel would be one thing, which has been given before. So
a
that
power
wouldn't be
struggle though with a
unprecedented.
member of the owner, like that's very specific. But the power, like, you don't have more power than the owner of the NFL team. Just ask Jim Irsay.
Well, based on the reports that there's one member of the ownership group that has an issue with Sean Payton.
With the power struggle, yeah.
So that's maybe a roundabout way of saying. It's a bad way to phrase it, saying power struggle, because you're right.
The power struggle is with the general manager.
There is no power struggle. The owner of the team has the power, but it would be a conflict with the power.
Yes.
Unless not a power struggle, but
he
fears
power.
He would be at conflict with a part of the ownership group because they're not in lockstep with what he wants. The only thing I can think of that would prevent any type of interference with a head coach would be some form of you can't get fired within 5 years. I mean, you just can't. It's you don't touch anything I'm doing for 5 years, then we decide. Yeah. I don't care how bad it gets. It's going to be my choice. You're going to pay me this much. I'm going to be in charge of personnel, and I get 5 years mandatory. You cannot fire me for any on-field reason at all. Maybe that's what he would be asking. I'm just trying to think of what could possibly prevent an employee of someone else not ever having a power struggle or having to answer to authority with an organization. That maybe that's the one thing. You're completely untouchable at that point. They can't fire you for a certain amount of time. But
I guess we'll find out at some point. This is from Mark Maskey, by the way, that's reporting this from the Washington Post.
Well, there's a chance that Payton's just overplayed his hand.
By the way,
too.
and Mark Maskey also clarifies, Sean Payton has loved his interactions with Condoleezza Rice during the Broncos interview process, according to this source. Anyway, it's not a foregone conclusion that it's Sean Payton because Dan Quinn's removed his name from consideration. Now the focus is on D'Amico Ryans, and we've seen one coaching hire made. It feels like now that Frank Reich's in Carolina, the replacement for Frank Reich, Jim Irsay reportedly wants it to be Jeff Saturday. And we're still waiting on Arizona, Denver, and Houston as D'Amico Ryans continues to make the rounds. He's mentioned in Denver and in Houston.
He'll get one of those jobs.
Yep. And the other interviews, like Monty Ossenfort is the new general manager in Arizona. They wanted to go through the GM search first. They've done that. and now they're conducting their own search. Ejiro Evero, the Broncos defensive coordinator, he's interviewing with the Texans for a second time. He's also among the 7 that are getting a call back from the Colts, although I'm not even sure it matters. I hope it does.
Yeah, you can pencil in Jeff Saturday on that list of availabilities.
I think so.
Don't put it in Sharpie yet, but just pencil in Jeff Saturday for the Colts.
Yeah, and I think now we'll start to see a flurry of hires when Payton makes up his mind that he's just going back to media. Dan Quinn's now removed his name. That really narrows the field of all the interviews and these teams that are interviewing the same guy. Really.
What an incredible power play by Sean Payton to just come in guns blazing and say, I want 20 to 25 million and complete control. By complete control, I mean, I'm basically the owner. You can't fire me. You can't touch me. I do whatever I want. He has overplayed his hand if that's what he's doing, and the results will tell us that. If no one bites and he doesn't get a job this year, that's Sean Payton saying, I want the world or I'll just go back to media. I just won't do it.
Or he takes less than what he's demanding. Again, like if he wants to coach with Russell Wilson and he likes the Denver defense and he likes the setup with the overall ownership vision, I don't know why you wouldn't go there if they're going to pay you what you want.
I think people will really start to doubt just how much he wants to coach.
I agree.
Eventually. I think this sort of happened with Gruden over time, where people stopped even caring, and then finally he just really wanted to coach again, so he took the Raiders' opportunity. But they're just, you get to a point where ownership is not going to, these billionaire owners aren't going to mess with this, thinking, why am I wasting my time talking to you if you're really not serious about wanting to coach again?
Mahomes looks set to play. We'll discuss that with Dan Z of OutKick. He's about to join us. He's chatted with Ryan Tannehill, who, of course, suffered the same high ankle sprain and played through it, or at least tried to before he was injured again with the same ankle. What did Tannehill have to say in regards to what Mahomes is going to go through in the AFC Championship game on Sunday against the Bengals? Details next on OutKick 360.
NIL, when it comes to Florida, has been a story over the last couple of weeks because of Jaden Rashada. And you put out a great piece with a timeline on kind of how things went down, who kind of was the one involved in this, I don't know, situation with Jaden Rashada. And so let's kind of dive into that. Coming off your reporting, and I don't want you to give everything away because I want people to read it. But what we're kind of looking into this thing for the last couple of months, man, what were some of your big takeaways? Maybe shocked you, or you just, when you dug deep into it, you're like, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
Well, I think that's probably the first thing to note is this has been ugly publicly for 2 weeks, but as you said there, it's been going on for 2 months, and I think the big thing is, and I didn't really touch on it in the story, was it was so interesting to follow Florida and Miami this year. Obviously, you've got John Ruiz, a billionaire, pretty deep pockets, and he's just throwing money and caution to the wind. Wanted to see his Hurricanes get back to the top, and there were so many instances, more than I can remember since I've been covering the team since 2013, where Florida and Miami were 1-2 or in the top 3 with commits in the same class. And I think Florida just came out second place or third place to Miami so many times. And I think what precipitated this whole incident was Florida trying to get a win back. And this was right after Cormani McClain shocked the world. And it was right after Florida had gotten back into conversations with Jaden. Because prior to him coming to Miami, they were sent to the scholarship offer. I think saw the writing on the wall. Jaden had told them, hey, I'm going to go to Miami. And I think what you got was Florida and boosters or collective people around Florida like, hey, we need to get a win. And I think you saw, really a year-long battle between Florida and Miami, collectives and boosters, that Miami was winning. I think you saw Florida try to get back into it. And whether the money was never there and there was miscommunication, or if the money was promised and then somebody came off, and was like, hey, that's a lot of money. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I don't know. We probably need to get to litigation and some discovery to find that out. But for whatever reason, the money was not going to be there. And the Gator Collective kind of realized that, and with their name on the line and their name on the contract, terminated the contract.
Why do you think we've gotten into besides the rivalry between Miami and Florida, Cristobal coming down to Miami, Billy Napier's at Florida now. You got Norvell, a lot of people thought was hanging on by a thread at Florida State. Now he kind of turns it around in 2022. Okay, so he's set for the next year or so, maybe 2 years. We'll see. Well, why do you think it turned into a pissing match between Miami and Florida? It's like when NIL struck, it felt like those two teams, and not Florida State. I'm not trying to diminish Florida State, but it felt like Miami and Florida were just going back and forth and seeing who could either outbid the other, or B, take it one step further when it comes to recruiting. Is it because of Ruiz, and is it because of some of the boosters at Florida? Is it that simple?
I mean, nothing is black and white in our world, and you're probably looking at way more colors than even black, white, and gray when it comes to NIL. And in this scenario, I mean, this is a landscape that Nevin Shapiro would have thrived in. Wouldn't have had to be so sneaky.
Patrick Mahomes was jogging around on the practice field yesterday, Chad. It's not like they held him out.
Put on a great show out there.
I mean,
got shot up with something to numb it and just went out there and put on a show for everyone that saw it.
I mean, he looked a lot better than he did on last week, that's for sure. And I'm a bit surprised that he's practicing on a Wednesday, personally. Especially knowing what Tannehill is going through here in Nashville.
Well, and our next guest uncovered something with Ryan Tannehill, story broken at OutKick.com, Hutton. And Ryan Tannehill says not every high ankle injury is the same, and that's important to note. They're all various degrees of difficulty to overcome.
Dan Z joins us from OutKick. Zach Sheshky joins us on OutKick 360, making his debut. Dan, great to have you on, man, and great getting in touch with Tannehill, who has gone through this process and tried to play through it at least for a stretch of games here.
Thanks, guys. A couple of things. First, excellent work on the last name. I told them you didn't even have to try it. I'm good with Dan Z.
Bravo.
I have a lifetime of being in class. They get to the last one, and I'm like, it's me. It's Z. It's fine. We're good. And you guys were talking about Mahomes' video. Did you see today he threw in a little spin? His video from practice today, he was doing the jog, and he did a little spin move, letting everybody know he's just fine.
It is interesting because we watched that game last week, Dan, and I think everybody had the same thought. This guy's on one leg. I mean, he's playing, and there were stretch handoffs that he could barely get to because he was so hobbled on the leg. And my initial thought was it's only going to get worse. He's on adrenaline right now. Tomorrow morning, on Monday, it's going to be worse, and it's going to get worse as the week goes on. But he'll probably be in a place where he can at least give it a go for next week's game. These videos show something different. But, Dan, you got in touch with Ryan Tannehill about this, who talked about his ankle injury. And I thought it was interesting how he described the different levels of high ankle sprains and what they could cause.
Yeah, so I texted with Tannehill this morning, and the interesting thing, if you remember, Tannehill was hurt. He injured his ankle, had a high ankle sprain early in the year, middle of the year, finished the game, and then sat out 2 weeks. And then he came back and he got hurt again in week 15 or 16, sorry.
Yep.
And then he was carted off the field, literally carted off the field, shoe off, the whole nine, came back into the game, finished the game, and then had surgery that week, and it ended his season. So, guys, that I was kind of drawn to that story because I was with you. My thought was, okay, Mahomes can play the rest of the game. Plenty of guys have done that. As you guys mentioned, the adrenaline. I'm sure there was a report that he was shot up with some Toradol. They taped up the ankle, the whole nine. He got x-rays negative. But how is that not going to swell up the next day? And how is he going to be, like most guys, he didn't even leave the stadium in a walking boot, which confused a lot of people. Like even Tony Romo, I think on the broadcast said the same thing. Like, yeah, he's not gonna be able to walk tomorrow. So to see him have the turnaround that he's had is quite incredible. And Tannehill actually mentioned that. He said that he has played through high ankle sprains before. He's had ones that weren't as severe where, he missed a few plays, finished the game, and then returned the next week. But he also made sure to point out that it's not the easiest thing, and it was painful in those ensuing weeks. So expect Patrick Mahomes to definitely be feeling it, whether he, obviously he's going to play, but whether or not how he's moving, he's going to feel it.
Yeah, and the other thing too is whenever he left the game last week, he just the time that had elapsed from when he left to when he returned to the second half was like a full hour. Like most of the time it's just you're playing on adrenaline. In that case, it had wore, at least in my mind, it would have worn off by then, right? And he's still coming back in, and he played well. I mean, all things considered, I'm really intrigued. And I'm curious, Dan, do you think this has been overplayed or underplayed, this storyline, and in regards to what he did last week and how he performed?
Yeah, I think a little overplayed last week because, as we mentioned, guys have come back on this injury and finished games. But I do think it's actually being underplayed during the week.
Yeah.
I think now that everybody sees him on the practice field, they think, okay, everything's fine. This guy's 100%. He's not 100%. And I also, in addition to Tannehill, spoke to a couple of doctors who talked to me and said, at best, he's going to be 60, 70%. One of them said, he's going to be able to throw, but there's no way he's going to be able to run. I mean, he's got to be less than 50% mobility playing on that injury 8 days after he suffered it. And I think that's the part that people aren't focusing on as much is that, Mahomes, a big part of what he does, it's not just, he can't scramble. No, he runs around and lets his guys get open. And one of the issues the Chiefs have is outside of Travis Kelce, which one of these guys is going to beat his defender off the line consistently? Part of what makes Mahomes great is he runs around in the backfield, allows guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, who also probably won't play. But those guys need time to get open, especially against this Bengals defense. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. Can these guys make their plays at the line? Because I don't think Mahomes is going to be able to dance around in the back. He's going to have to stay in the pocket. Both doctors said he'll be able to move around in the pocket, but the deep throws are going to be a problem. He can make his off-platform throws within 10 to 20 yards. He'll be able to do that. He can change his arm angle to get around guys and avoid the rush and, do the things we're accustomed to seeing Patrick Mahomes do. But at some point, if you're trying to huck the ball 40, 50 yards down the field, you're going to have to push off your right leg. And Patrick Mahomes has an injury to his right leg.
Dan Zakshevsky is our guest, OutKick.com. Great story on Ryan Tannehill and the injury. You can read it, OutKick.com right now. I guess the one encouraging sign to me, Dan, is not just the videos this week, but the fact that it's Patrick Mahomes and his arm talent that's out there because, as you just mentioned, it's his plant leg. So it's going to be all arm throws in this game. And there's not many quarterbacks in the NFL that I'd trust more with that than Patrick Mahomes and his ability to slot the ball in different directions with his arm. What do you think about that? And that maybe bridging that 60 to 70% the doctor told you to make it look more like 75 to 85% given his arm talent.
Yeah, I think that's the big key here, right? Like this is still Patrick Mahomes at 60 to 70, maybe even 80%, let's say, on a optimistic side. But Patrick Mahomes at those levels is better than Chad Henne. I mean, we know that, right? So they're not going to play Chad Henne when 80% of Patrick Mahomes can get the job done. And one other thing that was brought up when I was talking to people was, Mahomes uses his athleticism, but he doesn't rely on it. If this were a guy like Lamar Jackson or even like Jalen Hurts, who really needs that element of the game to be as effective as possible, we would be telling a different story here. But we are talking about Mahomes. We are talking about a guy who has top 1-2 arm strength in the league, doesn't need to drive off the back leg every throw he makes. He'll be able to dink and dunk his way. And also, you got to trust Andy Reid here. He's going to put a game plan together to protect his star quarterback. He knows the limitations Mahomes has. That's the one thing we haven't seen in these videos. It's great to see him jogging, but I don't know about you guys, but I don't see a lot of quarterbacks jogging around the field when defensive linemen are barreling down. Like, we need to see how this guy can cut, how he can dip and dive when he needs to. So the jogging videos are great. Him stepping off the podium, again, I don't know a lot of stairs on NFL fields. So again, not sure how much that really tells us, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He's going to do Patrick Mahomes things. I'm interested to see how he adapts. My suspicion is that he will, but we also should set our expectations at a reasonable level.
Well, and then he takes, all the weight of Trey Hendrickson as well on a hit on Sunday, and then we'll see how the ankle really holds up. I was curious. One of the doctors you spoke with, Dan, said that he would inject him with stem cells, right? But it would inflame the ankle so much that he wouldn't be able to. He wouldn't be at the percentage he even is currently for game day. I wonder, though, if they win, if that's the remedy with the week off prior to the Super Bowl.
So, no.
Okay.
What I was told was that the stem cells were actually different from the PCP, the plasma-rich. I'm sorry, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah,
platelet-rich plasma injection. I'm going based off what I was told.
It sounded right. It sounded very medical, whatever you just said. So it's perfect.
Yes.
It's the platelet-rich plasma, which is what they would normally use in this situation, that causes the inflammation. So if they knew they were going to hold him out for several weeks, that's the treatment route they would go, because you cannot move on that. And there won't be enough time for him to have even one of those on Monday and play in 13 days. That would be a stretch. The stem cells was actually a separate thing that was suggested as a very aggressive treatment plan. Now, that wouldn't necessarily cause any issues with him to play Sunday. In fact, this doctor said if he were treating Mahomes, he would give him stem cells on Sunday morning. But it's very aggressive. It's a risk-reward strategy on whether or not it would take properly, how his body would react to it. And most teams aren't going to take that kind of risk, especially with a $400 million quarterback who they need to play and play well on Sunday. So I apologize for the confusion. Those were two separate things. Like I said, he said he would do it, but again, it's risky. It's real risky.
So I know, Dan, you're working on some mock drafts, getting ready for the draft at OutKick.com. Where do you stand on Will Levis? We are very clear with our viewpoint on Will Levis just being way overhyped right now. When you look at him as a prospect in the NFL to, as a first rounder, be a franchise quarterback for someone, what do you think when you see Will Levis?
It's interesting. When I do my mock drafts, I solely do. It's not what I would do. I'm trying to guess what I think the teams will do. And quite honestly, someone's going to fall in love with this kid. They're going to use comps like Josh Allen, a guy who had some questions in college, but hey, all the physical tools are there, and it worked out for Josh Allen. But a lot of these guys don't work out. You look at a guy like Trey Lance. I'm not saying that they're the same, but he was another one. It was like, well, let's overlook some of the college stuff because of the tools this guy brings to the table physically. And, the 49ers convinced themselves to trade half their draft to move up and grab Trey Lance, who isn't playing in the NFC Championship game, even though the San Francisco 49ers are. And by the way, side note, they could have used that pick on Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle, and just imagine what this 49ers team would look like if they had drafted one of those guys instead of Trey Lance. But side note, I'm not sold on Will Levis at all, but I don't think there's any doubt some quarterback needy team in the top 10 is going to make a move. And he might end up being one of those guys who rises up the draft board. They already started coming out with, and it reminded me a lot of Zach Wilson. Remember the Zach Wilson video where he made that turnaround 70-yard throw? And that was just the moment where you're like, oh, the Jets are taking this guy. The Jets are taking this guy.
Salivating. Everyone just went nuts over that video.
About a month ago, a Will Levis video came out where he's standing flat-footed and he just turns his shoulders and he throws it like 50 yards on a rope. Great throw. And I'm like, the dude's wearing headphones and a cutoff. That's not how you play football. Don't give me any of these videos of a guy standing on an empty field with no defenders, no pass rush, wearing Beats by Dre, hucking the ball down the field is why we should draft this kid. So always be wary when you start seeing the combine videos coming out and the hype. But like I said, NFL GMs, they fall in love easily, man. They do.
You know, really love that video. Zach Wilson's mom's friends definitely loved that video when they saw it.
And Mel Kiper.
Yeah, both for
Who
the same,
also loves Will Levis
for different reasons. He does. Yeah, we've been discussing it. It's crazy to see the level
It's
of
his fetish.
Doesn't matter if you lose by 10 or 40. He said with the turnovers. What is he supposed to do? He's at Kentucky. He acts like he's playing at an FCS school against SEC schools with Kentucky. It is nuts. Dan, you also wrote about the trade for Aaron Rodgers, the possible trade. With Nathaniel Hackett now going to the Jets, we see that and immediately think, okay, this thing is being set up now to lure. It's basically an Aaron Rodgers thirst trap. With Nathaniel Hackett, his buddy, being there, if they can give up 2 first-round picks and get him, that could be a solution at quarterback. But I know you wrote that there may be another team that makes more sense for Rodgers.
Yes, so I'll address the Jets part first. First, they should be careful because the Denver Broncos tried the whole Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers thing, and it didn't go so well.
Yep.
And the important thing to remember is that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a no-trade clause. So this idea that he gets to dictate where he's not a free agent. He is contracted by the Green Bay Packers, and he's going to have to go wherever they send him. So I don't know how much say he has in this. I did write that, for a guy who won 4 MVPs and won a Super Bowl, I think the team will show a little bit of good faith, at least as much as they can. But at the end of the day, they've got to get the best return they can for one of their best assets. The other team, and this would never happen. This was just a total hypothetical that I started kicking around when I was just kind of looking at possibilities. They're not going to trade him to the Detroit Lions, but I just think the Detroit Lions make so much sense. I really do, man. First of all, putting him in a dome at the tail end of his career, I think would be super helpful. He obviously knows the division really well. Pairing him with a young upstart team that has some weapons, they were on the cusp. Like, they're much more on the cusp than the Jets. And the other thing is, too, they play in a division, the Lions, where, the Vikings were a bit of a fraud this year. We don't think the Bears are going to be all that good. Obviously, the Packers are going to take a step back when they trade Rodgers. That division is ripe for the taking if they can get someone in there. I know everyone's like, oh, Jared Goff. We know who Jared Goff is, man. We know. He's been around. We know. He has to be in the absolute perfect situation to make it work. But he's not a guy who's going to elevate your team to a Super Bowl level. And this Detroit team does need a quarterback to elevate it to a Super Bowl level. The Jets, on the other hand, are in a division with the Bills. They're in a division with the Dolphins. You can't count out the Patriots and Bill Belichick. And oh, by the way, you've got Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert. The path through the AFC is just such a treacherous one that I don't know it makes sense to trade 2 first-round picks, because essentially you're opening – the Jets would have to say, we're going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. I don't think the Jets are winning a Super Bowl in the next 2 years with Aaron Rodgers. So that's why it doesn't make sense to me.
What about the Raiders and Dolphins?
Okay. Love it.
I mean, it just
Dolphin.
So they check the box for AFC because Green Bay's not going to trade him in the NFC, right? And then the Dolphins.
I don't know how much I buy that. But okay.
But with the Raiders, he reunites with Devontae Adams. And then with the Dolphins, I know they've said publicly they're back with Tua, but how can you be back with Tua knowing that the concussion history is what it is from this year? I'm hesitant to say that I believe them on that. And Rodgers and Brady at either spot make a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And, just a note on the whole, we're not going to trade him in the NFC. First of all, that's dumb. You've just cut half the teams in the league out, thus cutting your leverage in half, which is silly. I never understand that either. So it's better if Rodgers leaves the conference and could potentially beat you in a Super Bowl than in beating you in the NFC playoffs? I don't, again, that stuff always seems silly to me. But as far as the Dolphins, yeah, man, that actually does make a lot of sense because the Dolphins are a team that's much more prepared right now than the Jets to win a Super Bowl. Clearly, it was quarterback play that held them back. Everything that they went through the entire season with Tua having to start a third stringer in the playoffs,
Yep.
still almost winning the game, by the way, even with a third stringer who didn't play particularly well. Yes, I could see that. The Raiders, man, that's another team you're like, okay, does bringing Aaron Rodgers put you on that Mahomes Herbert level? And I don't think the answer is yes to that. I mean, being in the AFC East where, the Bills are obviously the top competition, like there's some serious questions now about the Bills. They got knocked out of the playoffs at home. They haven't won an AFC title with Josh Allen, who's now been there for 5 seasons. There are questions about that team. They're paying their guys a lot of money. I don't know. So the AFC East seems eminently more winnable as well if we're looking at teams because again, if you're bringing in Rodgers and you're trading 2 first-round picks, you have to think we need to try to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 seasons. So if I'm looking at my roster, and I don't think, every GM looks at their roster and thinks that's possible, but we have to be realistic. You have to assess your roster and think, is this a team that's ready to compete right now? Dolphins, yes. Raiders, no. Jets, no.
And oh, by the way, Dan, Derek Carr's out there too, and available for one of these teams. And that's kind of a mystery landing spot for him as well.
Well, the Colts, that's what they do, right? Rivers.
It does feel like a Colts move for Derek Carr.
It's pretty much, right? Like just cycle in another vet. I actually, I wrote about the Colts in my mock draft, and I think their GM, Chris Ballard, finally has to put his foot down and go get a guy. They have to go get they have to stop recycling these veterans. I think they will explore very heavily trading with Chicago to get to the number 1 pick from 4. I think that makes a lot of sense for both teams. That's my official sort of feel on where I think the Colts might go.
Dan Z, OutKick.com, has been our guest. Fantastic debut. You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah,
Dan.
you definitely need to make this a more regular thing. Great job.
Thanks, guys.
And read the story of Tannehill's perspective on the high ankle sprain with Patrick Mahomes. That's at OutKick.com right now. So Mike McCarthy, very interesting. So Dan Quinn's returning to be the defensive coordinator in Dallas. This is big for us, is what McCarthy says. He then declined to commit to Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator, as Kellen Moore is getting interviews for head coaching jobs. And I'm reading from Ed Werder, Mike McCarthy declined several opportunities in his season-ending news conference to commit to Kellen Moore returning if he's not hired elsewhere. The two spoke briefly today. McCarthy, quote, Kellen Moore, just like the rest of the coaches, will be evaluated. So while the guy is getting...
Sounds like Kellen Moore really needs to land one of those head coaching jobs that he's interviewing for right now.
Yes, exactly. And it also sounds like he will be evaluated by Jerry Jones, not Mike McCarthy.
His evaluation actually comes right before mine. He'll be in the office with Jerry. Then I'll be evaluated, and we'll decide that. Pretty much, I'll let you know in a few weeks, or Jerry will, who will be answering these questions in these press conference settings. It may not be me.
Hit us up on social. OutKick 360 is where you can find us. We'll hit some other headlines as we wrap up the show. We'll get you ready for the sports evening. And there's outrage over a mascot we'll tell you about next on OutKick 360.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, and the next morning I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in their commander takes over the task force. We were in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi-Kanabad, and he wants a briefing on our capabilities. And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is, and all these things. And he's like, "Gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time." And ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over, and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important. But now it was, especially as they heard that the mountains were 20,000 feet, and that the weather was horrible, and all these things. And so we tell him what we can do. And he goes, "Well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments, or ODAs, up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with." So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. That was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go, as far as because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. Chad, good job by the Vols last night. They
Not bad.
Play some good defense.
They do.
Now we get to see Tennessee and Texas later this week.
They are masters of the no offensive explosion on their end blowout.
Yeah.
They now have, they've set a school record. They have 11 games they've won by 20-plus points. They still have 11 games left. That's the most they've ever had in a single season in Tennessee basketball history. A lot of blowouts for them. And
it's
they
hard
just
to score
suffocate.
60 on them.
It is. They just suffocate people. I think tomorrow's game against Texas is going to be fantastic. Texas has a great offensive team. They can play really good defense. I think this is going to be a physical battle. This will be right down to the wire, probably pretty low scoring by both teams. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So what's going on with A&W and the fast food location and the troll job they've done with M&M's?
So here's what they posted on social media. This is from A&W. All American food. By the way, underrated fast food joint. There's not a lot around. They're hard to find at times, but pretty good food. They wrote, America, let's talk. Since 1963, Rudy, the great root bear, has been our beloved spokesbear.
Mm-hmm.
We knew people would notice because he's literally a 6-foot-tall bear wearing an orange sweater. But now we get it. Even a mascot's lack of pants can be polarizing. Therefore, we have decided that Rudy will, not Rudy, Ruti, will wear jeans going forward. Not to worry, though, he will remain our official spokesbear. After all, he is unbearably cute, and I'm impossible to replace. I'm squinting right now hard.
Chad can read. He just can't read the small print.
We are confident Rudy will continue to champion good food and good times for many years to come now in denim. That, the post from A&W. This is a troll job of what M&M did. I had to ask Davey before this segment what exactly M&M did because Hutton, it is mind-numbingly stupid to sift through the different things that people are going woke on that I just don't even understand. I see these stories about someone changing a mascot or changing a slogan or changing a product.
One person complains.
I don't even understand what the issue was to begin with. Can an M&M just be an M&M? How are
Apparently
M&M
not.
sexualized? I have no idea. Didn't know it was a thing. But a very small minority of people have a problem with it. So these companies feel like they have to change it for everyone. It makes no damn sense. This is a funny job by A&W to do this. Clearly a joke, they were saying. But anytime I see a company make a move like M&M's did with that, I always wait to watch the company that's just lying in wait to troll them. That's the company I want to support. Not the one that makes the decision like M&M's. I want to support the company that is quick to troll any competitor or anything that will troll the companies that make decisions like M&M's did. So good job, A&W. And also underrated fast food.
It feels like a social media campaign that we would see in the NFL.
It's a war. It's like I said with Cincinnati.
It's a war.
It's a social media war. When Brandon Beane had the comment about we don't want to suck bad enough to draft Jamar Chase, I'm just waiting for Cincinnati to post something the moment Jamar Chase does something on Sunday to glad we suck bad enough to get this guy with the video of him scoring a touchdown.
You know, some people find it cheesy, the social media back and forth between the media members, like the social media employees of the team. But what it's become, it is what the trash talk in the NFL used to be. It's just the 2023 version of it. Like the players now are trading jerseys, and signing autographs and doing all things for each other at the 50-yard line after losing a game of magnitude or no magnitude. I appreciate those that don't swap the jerseys in the middle of the field after a loss, that do it later in the tunnel or wherever. Because it comes across as, well, what just happened is no big deal.
Yeah.
Right? We're over it already.
Just a game, fellas. Nothing.
The
nothing
social
to worry
media
about.
back and
nothing
forth,
to concern
though,
yourself with.
It's the version of what it used to be, back in the early 2000s,
well,
2010
great.
even.
It's great, but let's also be honest. The only people they get riled up over are the opposing fan bases. I don't think the players care at all about what's being posted by the other team.
No,
about
everyone's
them.
friends.
But
that's what I'm saying. Like,
isn't it amazing though that everyone remains friends in pro sports, the NFL, yet every single pro athlete can take the smallest thing as a slight and use that when answering questions in the media.
No.
But they're all buddies after the game. But for they can even take things that don't exist.
There's very few players that actually.
And then
like
turn
Eli
into
Apple's
something.
one of them. Now,
Well, Nolan Smith of Georgia, after they won the national title, in the interview saying, "Everybody had us down for 7-5 this year. Well, how do you like us now?" And I'm thinking, you were third in the country preseason.
No one did.
I mean, you could have said we won the national title and we got disrespected being ranked third, but not a single person thought you were going 7-5.
No.
You just created that in your head, and then you repeated
Or maybe
it like
that
it was fact.
that one troll on social media that again, the same troll that's trolling M&Ms about changing the M&M.
It's like the joke I make every day or most days about people said we wouldn't make it to the end of the show or
Right,
make it into
yeah.
a third hour. I'm joking when I say that. It would be as if I thought everyone was actually saying that and created it in my mind to turn it into something real.
Now
that's not actually real.
We do know former NFL safety Blaine Bishop, former Titan and Eagle.
Yep.
He, during weeks, would make up a storyline in his head about the opposing running back. It could be a tight end. It could be a wide. It didn't matter. And he would be standing over the player on game day, literally chewing him out for whatever storyline he had concocted that week to get mentally into hating the player he was facing. Where the guy's looking up going, "Blaine, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say that about your mother-in-law, or whatever." And
See, I think
that's how he got fired up to go and just kill people.
Well, we know
on the field.
We know Blaine, so we could ask him this. I'd like to know if Blaine started that in the NFL or started that in college based on his career, because he may have stolen that from the movie The Program. Because Alvin Mack, the linebacker in the movie, that's what he does. He goes up and says, "I heard what you said about my baby sister." And the running back's like, "Dude, I don't know your sister."
Yeah.
He's saying that's a plot line in the movie.
Having talked to
where
Blaine,
with his trash talk, he is creating things that the opponent said about him or his family.
And
he's repeating it back
he
to him
has
during the game.
specific examples of players, and I can't remember who the players were now, but that would look back at him like, "Dude, you got the wrong guy. Stop hitting me so hard," or whatever it might be. I don't know I don't think guys do that anymore. Now they would be fined, so they're certainly refraining from doing.
Well,
that.
to close it out, they're certainly not doing it over social media posts by teams.
Yeah,
but it's fun for
or
us.
because they really hate the opponent.
It's fun for us, though.
Yeah, they'll be DMing and tagging on social media their opponent after the game.
No doubt.
With the autographed items that they've received at the 50-yard line after the loss. We will preview the championship matchups for the NFL tomorrow. Hope you'll join us for the Friday edition. Start at 3 o'clock Eastern on the OutKick Network.